Mike Yannis listening to me as well as you do.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Welcome everybody to the January 21st, 2025 Landmark Preservation Commission meeting. I am calling it to order on what says 3 after 1 p.m. The first thing we do is introduce ourselves, and I'll go first since I'm already talking. I'm Julie Johnson. I'm the Historic Preservation Project Manager, and I was nominated by the community at large. Erica?
I'm Erica Warzel. I'm an architectural historian and preservation consultant, and I was also nominated by the community.
I'm Nick Fusianis. I'm an architect and developer, and I was nominated by the American Institute of Art.
I'm Larry Sykes. I'm an architect and I was nominated by History Colorado.
Good afternoon, I'm George Dennis, retired cop, nominated by History Colorado.
I'm Graham Johnson, just in time.
Yes.
Project manager nominated by the Denver Planning Board.
Terrific. Chris?
I'm Chris McGinnis. I'm a forensic architect and I was nominated by the mayor's office.
Thanks, Chris. And we have two commissioners joining us virtually. Rusty, if you could turn on your camera. Emily, if you could introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Emily Hazen, nominated by City Planning. I'm a designer and preservationist.
And I'm Rusty Brown. I'm an architect and was nominated by the AIA.
Thanks, Rusty.
And I'm Brittany Bryant. I'm just Denver Landmark Preservation staff.
Just that. I'm gonna remember that. Okay, the first thing we ought to do then is, do you have a slide for me to read? Okay, I'm sorry. In the audio. So all of you here can obviously hear me. So we have people here joining us in person, but for any of you joining us virtually, for better sound quality, we strongly encourage you to download Zoom on your desktop, laptop, tablet, or mobile device. You can click audio settings to bring up an additional menu. You can add a background noise suppression, test your speaker and microphone, adjust their maximum output volumes. For presenters or public commenters, when it is your turn to speak, to mute or unmute, please click on the microphone icon at the bottom of your screen. Expanding the menu next to the microphone will reveal additional options. Select your speaker and microphone devices. Test your microphone and speakers, adjust their maximum output volumes. And if you still have audio challenges, switch to the phone for audio. All right, the first thing we need to do is go to our meeting records for approval. There were two, the December 17 and January 7. Commissioners, were there any comments, any corrections? None, seeing none. Do I have a motion from the floor?
Madam Chair, I'll move to approve the meeting records for our commission meetings from December 17th, 2024 and January 7th, 2025.
Thank you, Erica. Second?
Second.
Graham has seconded it. All in favor of accepting the meeting records as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? All right, great. All right, then we go on to our public comments. I bet I have a slide. Okay, so members of the public have up to 2 minutes each for comments about historic preservation in general and items on the design review agenda, business items and discussion items. For today's meeting, there are no business items or discussion items. So it would be historic preservation in general in the city of Denver or something on the design review. Further comments on these topics will not be taken later in the meeting unless allowed by the chair. Members of the public have up to 3 minutes each for comments on public hearing items. But we don't have a public hearing item today. So all of your comments will be up to 2 minutes. So anybody here joining us who would like to make a public comment, just raise your hand and we'll get you up here at the table here and you'll have 2 minutes. We'll time it so you don't have to worry about it. All right. And then anyone who's joining us virtually who would like to speak, raise the hand raise button on your Zoom or use dial *9 on your keypad to raise your hand if you're joining by phone. Or if you're having trouble with that, you can email landmark@denvergov.org with your name and phone number if you are having difficulty with either hand raise option. So I suspect that most people are here for 2024-COA-832 at 101 West 14th Avenue, the big theater. What we'll do is we'll do that project first, and then I'll call the other 3 projects to see if anyone would like to make a public comment on one of those 3 comments. All right. So first, if you have a comment on 2024-COA 832, the Great Theater. Just raise your hands and we'll get you up here. All right, are you ready? Who would like to go first?
I'm just gonna turn on the camera. Y'all could just come up to the camera and do that.
Okay, well, this is good. So whoever wishes to go first. Finally. Just.
Where do you want me? Oh.
Right here.
on-
You just- So everyone can see you.
Hi there.
Hi, I'm excited. Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Hines. I serve on Denver City Council representing District 10. It's the Center City District that includes Golden Triangle, the two downtown neighborhoods, and Civic Center Park. So I want to touch base on two things. First, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. I can't do the walking part, but you get the idea. It is possible for us to preserve history while making it accessible for everyone. So as the first elected official in Denver's history, local, state, or federal, uses a wheelchair to get around and who identifies as a member of the disability community, I am very excited to see a plan that allows us to make I think reasonable changes to Civic Center Park while also making sure that it is accessible for everyone, including the disability community. So that's point number one. Point number two is I represent Golden Triangle, I'll also represent the downtown neighborhoods. There's a huge impediment right now in making sure that we have a broad and inviting pedestrian experience through our center city, and that is the Greek Amphitheater and the inaccessible locations that is Civic Center Park. So having some reasonable design changes can make sure that we celebrate the history that is Denver. It's 102, 103 years old at this point. But setting it up for the next 100 years also includes making sure that people from Golden Triangle can get to the Civic Center Park, people from downtown can get to Civic Center Park, and that there's an easy way for us to get from Golden Triangle to downtown and vice versa. And I think that will really celebrate and lift up the excitement that is Civic Center Park, the park where the people are. That has both civic and culture as two axes. Also, I included a letter of support that goes into more detail about accessibility in the disability community. I don't know where I am in the 2 minutes, but thank you.
You're right
Oh.
on it. Well done. Well
I
done,
meant to
sir.
do that. Thank you.
Obviously. Thank you very much, sir. Who's next? The pink shirt or red shirt? Just please state your name and then you'll have your 2 minutes.
Well, thank you. My name is Anthony Gemma. I'm a resident of Upper Downtown and a professional landscape designer working in Lower Downtown. I'm speaking today to voice my support for the design changes proposed. Civic Center Park represents the largest and most prominent green space for my neighborhood as well as other city center neighborhoods. And while I love so much about the park, including its beautiful mature trees, its fantastic classical architecture, and its rich cultural history, I also recognize that our only major local park doesn't currently function as an active and vibrant outdoor space for the local community on an everyday basis. The design changes proposed address this need that isn't currently being met for our neighborhoods. This design does a really good job of leveraging the park's existing strengths and respecting its current uses and historical significance, while also intelligently offering solutions that will activate the park and make it a more dynamic space that serves a much wider range of uses and users. Ideas such as the new garden rooms and the smaller scale pathways create intimate human scale spaces that can be enjoyed by individuals and small groups of friends and family, while still maintaining the great lawns and main walkway that makes Civic Center Park such a great gathering space for concerts, markets, demonstrations, and other large events. The design for the renovated amphitheater will likewise make that space more inviting and usable to both large and small groups, while remaining sensitive to the beautiful historic architecture. I appreciate the design team studying everything from the theater's orientation to its scale and proportions to ensure it is the best space it can be for the performances that it was originally intended for. And having had to frequently navigate the theater's steps with a baby stroller, to get from my home to the library, I can definitely say that the accessibility improvements would be a very welcome change. In closing, I'd like to thank the design team for their work on this project, as well as the committee for your consideration. I hope you will join me in supporting this exciting design for Civic Center Park that will give our city's central neighborhoods a vibrant, wonderful park that we can enjoy day in and day out. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, next. I see a hand back there. Yeah, come on.
Oh, sorry.
There's time for everybody. Yeah, that's okay. State your name and then you'll have your 2 minutes.
Hello, I'm Molly Rose Merkert. In May, I will graduate from CU Denver, having completed 2 graduate degrees, a Master's of Science in Historic Preservation and a Master's of Architecture. There are 3 major character-defining features of the north-south axis of Civic Center Park: Voorhees Memorial on the north, the Greek amphitheater on the south, and the continuous long flat promenade between the two. The 2 structures are entrances to the park, and like bookends, they define the main sequence of the park between them. The promenade they produce is a character-defining feature of City Beautiful movement architecture. You can travel from one of these monuments to the other without obstruction. The proposed design looks as though a spaceship has landed on a 5-foot-high raised platform, completely destroying the promenade and diminishing these 2 timeless examples of classical architecture. The new structure is so close, only about 50 feet from the colonnade and on top of the rostal columns. This alien structure will obstruct the continuity of the promenade, diminishing the power of the colonnades and destroying the intended entry procession of the Greek amphitheater. Civic Center is a place for large community gathering, like the Stanley Cup win and the People's March and Pride. Currently, crowds can expand along the flowing flat promenade from the Greek amphitheater to the Voorhees Memorial. Flipping the Greek amphitheater will cause interruption and separation for large gatherings by placing a bulky structure in the middle of the gathering space. This physically splits the crowd, excluding the greater audience from any stage performances. The presenter or performers on the proposed stage will have their back to part of the audience. The current amphitheater flows into the promenade and the rest of the park, allowing large gatherings to overfill the space naturally. This is another character-defining feature of the Greek amphitheater that should be protected. I strongly urge the commission to vote against this proposal. Thank you for your time.
Well done, right at 2 minutes. Thank you very much. Okay, next. I feel like you guys have been practicing. Which is totally okay. So your name and then you have it either on wherever you're comfortable.
Neil Anderson, I'm a preservation architect. And greetings and thank you, commissioners, for your stewardship of Denver's remarkable built history. I'm here today in full support of the Studio Gang proposal. What makes National Historic Landmarks enduring places is their ability to capture a moment in time, as well as their adaptability to contemporary needs and realities. Studio Gang honors both of these goals. The design is anchored in the park's contributing features, most importantly, the Greek Theater balustrade wall and Voorhees Memorial. It follows both the Civic Center design guidelines and master plan. It respects the park's historic hierarchy of datum lines. Its new elements are compatible in size, materiality, massing, and most importantly, feeling, while being of their own time, and it creatively accommodates both small and large events. The past and present artfully coexist. As someone whose rehabilitation design work for Civic Center dates back to 2008, as a preservation architect who has worked in over 50 National Historic Landmarks nationwide, and as a participant in many of the park's iconic events, I encourage you to support this application to help Civic Center reach its full potential and capture this moment in time.
Thank you. Next. Hi, your name and then you'll have 2 minutes.
My name is Stacey Passmore. I'm a Denver resident and also a landscape architect. I'm also a planner and I own a firm called Super Bloom. We work on many landmark historic properties. We've also worked on 2 properties in the Civic Center, the Denver City and County Building, and the Populous Hotel. So we really understand the sticky issues of kind of navigating historic and cultural landscapes and kind of bringing them into the future and activating them for, community use. So we do a lot of community engagement on our projects. I've also personally studied the ADA issues of the Greek Theater as part of a previous proposal phase for this project. So I also really understand how complicated and how challenging this problem is. And I'm fully in support of the plan proposed today by Studio Gang and by the Parks Department. I think it's really innovative, and I think it really balances some of those challenges with creating, a really sensitive approach to the historic landmark. I think previous plans actually brought the canopy closer to the structure, and this actually, by rotating it, gives a bit more breathing room. I think it will also create more comfort for people attending events because of, not facing south, directly looking into the sunlight. I think it also creates a better gateway through the historic structure, which is really important also to the larger civic center space and kind of how that works. So I think it is a really challenging project. I really can relate to how difficult this is, but I think they've come up with a brilliant and beautiful plan. So I hope you will support this for the city.
Thank you. All right, next. Don't worry, there's time for everybody. We'll get everybody. So have a seat, give us your name and then we'll have 2 minutes.
Fantastic. Good afternoon, commissioners. My name is Courtney Garrett. I'm the president and CEO of the Downtown Denver Partnership. And I'm here to share our support for Civic Center Next 100 and specifically the proposed renovations to the Greek Theater and Civic Center Promenade. At the Downtown Denver Partnership, we are stewards and activators of great public space. The Parade of Lights, the Southwest Rink at Skyline Park, busking, community and public art. We're proud to bring all of these memorable moments to our city. So why do we do it? Well, it's fun. And we know that the direct connection between active public space and community and economic benefit has been proven time and time again. At its inception, Civic Center Park was envisioned to be a beautiful place to observe, and it's served us that way for generations. However, the park has not been able to accommodate a diverse range of community needs. A lack of accessibility and obsolete elements have discouraged activation, discouraged gathering, and encouraged high barriers to creating moments that make memories. So we believe that the currently proposed renovations will begin to solve for that. The reorientation of the Greek Theater will create a more usable performance space while respecting the park's historic character. The improved accessibility throughout the park will create an inclusive space, and the enhanced connection between the cultural complex and Civic Center Park will strengthen our cultural districts and the connection to downtown. We also believe that the new infrastructure will better support the diverse range of events that make Civic Center a dynamic gathering space. So overall, we believe that the renovations that will be presented today ensure that Civic Center remains a relevant, active, and welcoming space now and for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. There's a gentleman.
Everybody, my name is Josh Brooks. I'm here to also voice my support for the project. I'm speaking to you really in 2 separate capacities. First is as a design professional. I'm a principal at the architecture and design firm Sasaki, whose portfolio includes historic landmarks across the country, including our nation's capital, the Lincoln Memorial, the State Capitol Visitor Center, and recent works at both the Texas Capitol, Minnesota State Capitol, Wyoming State Capitol, and Illinois State Capitol. And so I speak to you with a bit of authority around what the appropriateness of projects like this are. I think it's really important to understand the intentionality behind making sure that public spaces remain relevant. When public spaces like this were crafted over a century ago, their intention was to serve the contemporary needs of society. It is our duty as design professionals, as preservationists, to ensure that they remain relevant in contemporary society. And so I think that's incredibly important. And so while the design is intentionally different, it does increase the functionality of the space and therefore does remain relevant into the future. I'm also here to speak on behalf of the Downtown Area Plan, which has identified the Civic Center Park as a very critical space. Our team is leading that process in concert with the City of Denver. And given the broad amount of community engagement that we've conducted, we can confidently say that the improvements to Civic Center Park and the importance of the park as a key public space within this broader city are incredibly important. And so I would strongly encourage you to vote in favor of this project today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, next, I see it. That'd be great. Your name, and then you'll get 2 minutes.
Hello, my name is Cassidy Cobb. Thank you for your time today and for listening to what I have to say. I'm a student at CU Denver. I'll be graduating in my undergraduates with a BS in Architecture and Interior Design. And I wanted to aspire and be respectful and responsible toward the architectural designs of the future and the built environment of this great city of ours. I'd like to express an opposition to proposed design concepts of the Civic Center Park, as I believe the proposed designs diminish and threaten the historical cohesive design qualities of the classical landmark, and is an impeccable example of the City Beautiful movement, interrupting its form, mass, and context on a regular basis of the large context of the interconnectedness of the space of Civic Center Park becomes a host of a large-scale city of public events. Civic Center Park, as a sum, provides a holistic stage for our citizens to celebrate their pride, diversity, gender equality, and national sports championships. The proposed concept of flipping the stage of the Greek amphitheater will destroy the connectivity and expansion and the inclusiveness of the openest stage. Flipping the stage will irreversibly separate the Greek amphitheater from the holistic context of the park and accomplish not a spatial or cultural division that will be ununiformed and unwanted to the civic exclusivity. It's unclear how the flip stage will accommodate to any event sports or even the connectivity between the Greek amphitheater and the greater context of Civic Center Park. A flip stage configuration orientation seems to be the greatest challenge of all its components. Now imagining all the citizens coming and gathering from the new proposed space will create problematic only within its future events. An architectural student, as myself, really appreciates all the precedents I have here in Denver to study on my own, and to diminish and destroy it would only bring great sadness to some of these students. It's an access that we don't always get, especially since not all of us have money to access travels to Rome. So to get rid of a landmark that we can study on our own would be very sad. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next. Okay, how about you? Yep.
Good afternoon. My name is Christopher Anderson, and I am a graduate student at the University of Colorado Denver's Dana Crawford Preservation Program. I am here to voice my objection to the proposed plan for the Greek Theater and Civic Center Park. While the intention to revitalize this space is commendable, the current proposal compromises the integrity of a historic treasure and violates both the 2009 Civic Center Design Guidelines and the principles of preservation. Preservation is not about freezing structures in time, but about thoughtful stewardship. Design guidelines exist to balance modern needs with historic integrity, offering clear criteria for restoration and permissible alterations. Unfortunately, the current proposal undermines these principles. By justifying demolition and new construction on the grounds of non-original materials, the plan disregards the fundamental tenet of preservation, that material replacement, when historically appropriate, is a necessary and common practice. Approving this plan sets a dangerous precedent, potentially paving the way for future projects to dismiss historic authenticity under similar pretext. I urge the Commission to reject this proposal and seek a revised plan that adheres to the established guidelines and embraces the spirit of preservation. Denver's built heritage is a non-renewable resource, and it deserves our utmost care and respect. As the preservationist John Ruskin once said, the greatest glory of a building is not in its stones nor in its gold. Its glory is in its age and in that deep sense of voicefulness, of stern watching, of mysterious sympathy, which we feel in walls that have long been washed by the passing waves of humanity. Let us honor that glory and humanity by preserving the authenticity of this historic structure. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes.
Hello, my name is Santiago Cepeda. Thank you for your time today. I'm a student at CU Denver College of Architecture and Planning, and I'm very interested in the study and practice of classical architecture. Upon studying the proposed changes to the Greek amphitheater, the first thought that comes to mind, if it's not broken, don't fix it. In its current historic configuration, the Greek amphitheater possesses a wealth of Colorado history and is a contributing feature to the Civic Center Park that has been recognized and designated a National Historic Landmark by the National Park Service. Civic Center Park is one of only 2 such designations located in Denver metropolitan area. Such as National Historic Landmark should protect this architecture from unnecessary modifications and modernizations. The park has accessibility challenges, yes, but I believe the drastic proposal of flipping the stage can be characterized by the hitting the easy button. Flipping the stage is a change that would interrupt the current dialogue and response between the Ruiz Memorial, the city and county building, and the state capitol. Simply, this contemporary intervention does not belong in this specific place. Additionally, flipping the stage would potentially promote privatization of the amphitheater, which essentially steals the treasured venue from its citizens. I believe the authors of this proposal, architect and stakeholder, believe in the phrase build it, and they will come. This beloved architecture should not be featured as part of a Hollywood script scenario. There is more value in preserving a historic landmark that has been in place for over 100 years than gambling with a proposal that does not live up to the architecture context it seeks to conquer. Nor can the proposed design guarantee enhanced public access. So thank you for your time. I ask the committee membership to vote against this proposal and demand a better solution for
Thank you, sir.
accessibility.
Yep, your 2 minutes is up. All right, how about you?
Thank you, Madam Chairperson, members of the commission. My name is Todd Matuszewicz. I am a candidate for a master's in historic preservation at the University of Colorado, Denver. I'm here to voice my appreciation for the Greek Theater as it is now in its current configuration. Full disclosure, I am a 5th generation Denverite, and I took it for granted. Growing up, I took this place for granted. It wasn't until much later that I realized what a gem we have, what a crowning jewel of the city this is. For 15 years, I was a school teacher, and I would take my middle school class on the RTD down to the Denver Public Library, and at lunchtime, we would walk across and have lunch in the Greek Theater. Inevitably, we would rehearse something we were working on, a choral piece or a theater piece, and unexpectedly, what would happen would be that either people that were regulars in the park would depart, or they would be intrigued and gather around. It is remarkable that this kind of unwitting band of performers could invigorate a space that the least among us, the smallest little effort, could create a vitality inside this park that we're talking about now. So what I would say is that this park was designed by Daniel Burnham, out of the work of Daniel Burnham, who has one of my favorite quotes: "Make no little plans. They have no magic to stir men's blood and probably themselves will not be realized." When this park was designed, it was not a little plan. What is being proposed today, I would suggest, has no magic to stir men's blood. Please register my opposition to the proposed changes that are being discussed today. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, my name is Kate Harris. Thank you so much for the opportunity to provide comment today. I'm a 10-year Denver resident, and for the last 6 years, I've worked downtown. So I'm speaking in my personal capacity, but as somebody who interacts with this space several times a week and has really seen some of the deficits, particularly around the accessibility and lack thereof. And I just am in strong support of the proposal today. I really ask that and implore you to consider the fact that it is really tough for people to get around in some of these spaces. I think there's been tons of work and thought put into the design proposal And a huge thank you to the staff that has worked so hard on that. I think it really strikes a balance of, meeting many different needs. And just think that the final product is gonna be of great benefit to the city, as well as me and my staff as we interact with the space on a weekly, several times a week basis. So thank you so much for the opportunity to testify today.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. All right.
So, I'm here in part representing Mayor Webb, who had intended to be here at this meeting, but has gotten sick, and a handout of some of what he said yesterday at the parade. He was coming to speak in opposition to this proposal. And then individually, I want to speak.
Sure, please give us your name.
My name is Sarah McCarthy. I'm an architectural historian and one of 4 former commissioners here today to express opposition to this proposal. Like everyone, I want the best for Civic Center Park, but today's focus is the preservation of character-defining features, with your task to determine if this proposal does that. A close analysis shows significantly more than 50% of the work proposed would demolish character-defining features of the Greek Theater complex, a figure that surpasses the Commission's own definition of total demolition. Section 2 in the Denver's Preservation Ordinance allows the Commission to approve applications if the proposed work would not destroy or adversely affect any architectural feature of the substructure. Section 6 specifically adopts the Secretary of the Interior standards that allow exterior alterations that will not destroy features and spatial relationships that characterize the property. Finally, subsection 11 in section 2 indicates that to demolish the plaza and seating, the applicant must first demonstrate that removal would not affect the integrity of the site. To have integrity means that a structure can be recognized as belonging to its particular time and place in Denver's history. Civic Center Park is the centerpiece of Denver's City Beautiful movement, the planning template for 20th century development of public assets in particular. Too many nights as commissioner,
Yeah, your 2 minutes
I
is
came
over.
home from meetings in tears,
Ma'am, your 2 minutes is
upholding
up.
the ordinance. That's your task today.
Your 2 minutes is up. Thank you very much. Next. How about you? Would you like to come up?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Please give us your name and you'll have 2 minutes.
My name is Dante J. Finley. I am the Executive Director and owner of the Agenda Theater. Last April, my company performed Romeo and Juliet at the Greek Amphitheater. I am today speaking in support of that, of the redesign. Our performance did not come without its challenges. We were very excited to perform on the Greek. However, we did have a disabled actor who we had to readjust a lot of their entrances and exits. We also had to readjust our staging plan for the production in itself because of sightline issues. I believe that this redesign is honoring the Greek Amphitheater and its integrity, and also honoring the community and the artists that are involved in this production. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, sir. All right, next, how about in the gray jacket, please? Have a seat, give us your name and we'll give you 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Stephen Ekman, Principal Architect of Ekman Design Studio, past historic Denver trustee, and the current president of the 5-state Rocky Mountain chapter of the Institute of Classical Architecture and Art. This is the most important design review that you, as Landmark Preservation Commissioners, will face in your tenure. This isn't a design review and driving club, but a monumental decision involving the crown jewel of the Denver park system. It's Rocky Mountain region's central civic gathering place, and as we know, a rare nationally significant historic resource. It is your duty as Landmark Preservation Commissioners to uphold and defend the current guidelines and standards for modifications set forth by the Civic Center Design Guidelines, Denver City Ordinances, and the Secretary of Interior Standards. However, it is not your duty or your purview to render a decision on whether this design is responsible for activating Civic Center Park, or whether it is an exciting architectural statement, or even whether it's an improvement on the earlier proposed versions of the applicant's current presentation and staff's response. That's what they would lead you to believe. You must ask the questions. Does this proposal meet the high design standards set forth by McMoney's and Bennett? Does it maintain the park's cohesive Beaux-Arts architectural harmony and the City Beautiful movement's commitment to beauty through proportion, symmetry, and scale? Does it uphold the spatial character of mass, form, and context that brings spatial order to the Greek Theater, the rostrum columns, and the central promenade? And does this proposal negatively impact the integrity of designated historic resources as stated by the guidelines, ordinances, and standards which bind your decision? The answers to these questions clearly lead one to conclude that the Landmark Preservation Commission must vote to deny approval of this current Phase 1 mass, form, and context application. Thank you.
Right at 2 minutes, sir. All right, next. Yeah. You guys are good. Please have a seat, give us your name, and we'll give you 2 minutes.
All right, thank you. My name is Celia Harding. I'm part of the executive committee over at Cleo Parker Robinson Dance. I'm here today to show support for the initiative. Cleo has been performing in the Greek Theater for about 54 years now, and it is a fantastic space, and it also has its challenges for how we show up there. And in the past couple of years, we have found ourselves in that space less and less, partially because of the accessibility and the needs of the dancers and also the layout. And some of what we've been hearing as we've been in these sessions and seeing the designs come online is we are excited about the ideas and the changes for the theater and being a part of that theater in a new iteration. And I think also just looking at, for us, for Cleo's, looking at the sort of downtown layout and how to make it as vibrant and as accessible to as many people as possible. We feel that this proposal is definitely a part of that design and future, and we're excited to sort of lend our support for the things as they are proposed.
Thank you. All right, next, I see, hi.
My name is Katie Stracina, and I am the Executive Director for the City of Denver's Office of Special Events. So for context, our office permits over 700 events that happen in our city, whether in the streets or in our parks. And I can say with some authority that Civic Center Park is our most popular event park. And it is a place where Denver knows how to show up. They know how to ride, walk, train, bus. They know how to get to Civic Center Park and to celebrate all the fantastic things that are happening in our city. And right now, it is in need of attention. It is the Greek Amphitheater. I'm speaking in support of the Greek Amphitheater right now. It is a beautiful historic site, but it is a shell of what it needs to be. It needs to have the functionality, as we hear from some of those who activate the park. It is in need of power. It is in need of accessibility. It is in need of a roof. I'm speaking on behalf of those people that activate our park, and they want the Greek Amphitheater. They want it to last for generations. We come here for Cinco de Mayo, for Pride Fest. We've had Hickenlooper announce his presidency. We've had Bernie Sanders. We've had Barack Obama. We have all of the major events from the biggest down to the smallest. And in order to put this park in a place where it can last forever, we need the Greek Amphitheater to function the way it needs to for events, for theater, for music, for our events. And right now it doesn't do that. And on behalf of the events and those who activate our park, we want it and need it to function better. And the thoughtful design that this team has put together presents that to us. Our event organizers have seen it and love it and believe that it is the solution, what we need to activate Civic Center Park. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next, I see somebody with a black sweater. There you go. Come on up.
Hi, my name's Nora Zorich, and I don't have background like any of these people. I'm just a retiree who moved to Denver because I think it's such a great place. And I have to say, I also belong to Historic Denver, and I love that about Denver. But I have to say, I just was so glad that this woman before me spoke, because my husband and I have decided to live in the downtown area so we can walk around and enjoy everything that makes the city so special. But that Greek amphitheater is not welcoming at all for people like me. And so I've always been kind of confused why it has been kind of stuck in time. And I think that we're hearing that people that want to access it want there to be a change. And I have to say, as an individual who doesn't access it to go dance or sing or anything like that, but just likes to be there, I really welcome this proposal, because I think it is something that will even make the downtown better than it is, and have people like me that choose to come here late in life and spend their time downtown, enjoy it even more. Thank you for taking my comment.
Well, thank you, of course. Yeah, gentleman in the back. Yeah.
Good afternoon. My name is Eric Reyes Steinweiss. I am not a trained architect nor a historian. However, as the Director of Community Partnerships and Activations for Civic Center Conservancy, I am one of these people that uses this space and activates it and helps others activate this space for events large and small, more than 60 times a year. My academic background, however, is in natural resource use, and I understand the difference between preservation versus conservation. I've seen the pictures from the inception of the Greek theater from 1919, and I can see that there have already been significant changes in that space in the park since that time. Both the Promenade and the Greek Theater present significant challenges to groups like the Agenda Theater, to groups like Vision Box Theater Company that I helped put on a production 2 years ago. They struggle with putting on events in the park, on the Promenade, in the Greek Theater, because of the design, the structure, and the plans for this do not significantly change the, from my understanding, the Greek theater itself, and in fact, embrace and incorporate the theater, but make the other spaces within the park usable and effective. Unusable, inaccessible spaces become quickly obsolete, no matter how beautiful they are. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right. Would you like to come up? Have a seat. Give us your name and you'll get 2 minutes.
My name is Tori Barnett, and I am a representative of Swallow Hill Music. Swallow Hill has been in the Denver music scene for 45 years. As many of you know, we're a music school. We teach music education in public preschools and other community resources. But the thing that's most applicable for this discussion is our rich history for producing live concerts in outdoor and unique settings, like the Denver Botanic Gardens and 4 Mile Historic Park. We are in support of this project, and we believe accessible music is vital. And this project would not only make it more accessible, it would expand the type of performance that's able to be held in the park. So we're excited to bring live music to the Greek, and with this project, it would make it more functional, more safe, and more fun. Thanks for your time.
Of course. Thank you. All right.
My name is Emmett Booth. I'm a student at the University of Colorado, Denver, and I just have a couple things to say about the project. Today, I want to address an important issue concerning the proposed Greek amphitheater project at Civic Center Park. It was initially Mr. Bennett's idea to have the Civic Center to be used as an open public space and a concourse rather than a secluded park. While the design itself is compelling and undoubtedly beautiful to Colorado's landscape, I believe that it needs to be critically examined as the principles of this project allow for the context of privatized use of the park versus publicized use of the park. The issue's core is that turning the space into a dominated large-scale amphitheater risks transforming the public space into a monetized private space. The amphitheater could be accessed only through booking events, limiting public access to the park. Particularly, this is problematic because it is paid through Elevate's Colorado program. So I ask you, why not imagine this park as a true public amenity where the theater stands alone and ensure it's a gathering site for everybody? I ask you to envision a space where local artists could perform and assemble without the needs of big event permits. This would embody the true spirit of Elevate Colorado and create community-driven spaces. While the design proposed for the amphitheater is truly intriguing, it would be more impactful as a standalone theater. The design neglects the contextual contribution of the rest of the site suited around it and would be best suited outside of the park confines. This would ensure it would contribute to Colorado's landscape, ensuring accessibility and inclusivity to all that use the theater. Ultimately, we should focus on fostering a
You're out of time, I'm sorry.
No worries. Thank you so much for listening.
Of course, thank you. Thank you for opining. Okay, who's next, please?
Good afternoon. My name is Scott Jordan. I'm a principal at a firm called Civitas. We're a landscape architecture urban design firm. We've been located in the Golden Triangle for 30 years. I've worked at Civitas for 24 years, and I've been able to witness Civic Center Park and some of the heroic efforts that the Conservancy, Denver Parks and Rec kind of brought in to try to activate the park. I got into landscape architecture because I believe public space is accessible for everyone. And in its current configuration, the amphitheater is not accessible. It's a barrier to use and to accessibility. We've also, as a national practice, we've been able to work in historically designated districts throughout North America and even into Europe. And we understand there's a delicate balance between preserving the historic landmark while bringing in contemporary uses into a park. I think what you see in the plans today is trying to strike that delicate balance and trying to not eliminate the fabric that makes the Greek amphitheater an important part of the history and legacy of Civic Center, but also brings it into contemporary times and makes the park more usable. And frankly, right now, it's not all that well used outside of extensive events that have been programmed in the park. I believe the improvements that are being proposed are going to make the park a more welcoming space that welcomes more users more regularly. And that's really what civic space needs to be in Colorado. So obviously speaking in support of the current plans and hope that you'll see it in your right to approve it. So thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. All right, next.
Hello, Chris Frampton, Denver. I'm also the president of the board and the Civic Center Conservancy. One of the founders. I've been lucky enough to work on Civic Center Park for 18 years now. Our group advocated for the bond money that redid the balustrades. We spearheaded the effort to create the design guidelines. We spearheaded the effort to designate Civic Center Park as a National Historic Landmark. We also advocated for the money for the Bannock Street, and we also advocated for the work that's been done through the Central Promenade. And admittedly, we're the leader here in partnership with the city. The tension is fascinating to me at all times. I was lucky enough to work on Union Station as well. What is good and new to help to improve something when it's a designated a landmark and how to make it work. I would point to Union Station's roof line breakage with the windows to create the portman rooms upstairs. But I would also point to the Greek Theater and the promenades to say that the Bennett plan, which as everyone knows here was never actually completed, came with some very difficult things to manage through. The Beaux-Arts style does not actually lend itself to moving through the park. The Greek Theater itself serves as a sort of barrier, as does the Voorhees Memorial, to moving through the promenade. You're supposed to be sort of connected and kept in the space. What this plan does is open that space back up, but it does it in acknowledgement of the guidelines and in response to the guidelines that were created and that govern this process. It is a thoughtful, light, beautiful, and gorgeous solution to a place that's had a problem since day one. So I think the guidelines exist. Landmarks in history across the country of new buildings within National Historic Landmarks is well established, and all of you are certainly very familiar with it. So we look forward to your approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Next. I see somebody with a, yeah. Please come up, sir. Please give us your name and you'll get your 2 minutes.
Thank you. I'm Dennis Humphreys, a Denver architect who is chair of the LPC during the passage of the Civic Center Design Guidelines in 2005. I'm intimately familiar with the content of this document, as its approval required extensive dialogue amongst the members. I quickly learned from this experience that even removing a single blade of grass was quite contentious. I can confidently state that members of the commission at that time were extraordinarily concerned about the future modifications to Civic Center, even though the guidelines included areas of potential change. The design guidelines clearly defined the Greek Theater as a contributing factor, a feature of the Civic Center. Thus, it has always been considered by the LPC that the Greek Theater would be protected. I assure you, had that members of that commission known that the guidelines might have the potential to be interpreted such that the Greek Theater could be removed, the guidelines would never have been approved as such. Two of Mayor Robert Spear's most significant initiatives were the colonnade of civic benefactors and the Greek Theater. Not just an open air amphitheater, but a Greek theater that we have today over 100 years later. Mayor Spear died prior to the completion of the Civic Center, but before his death, he proclaimed, "I want to finish Civic Center before the end of my term. The people look to me to do it, but at least I have gotten it so far defined that nobody will be able to change the plan." My hope today is that the current LPC will not be the commission to be remembered for the demolition of a contributing feature of Civic Center, an important part of Mayor Spear's legacy. I'm not asking you to simply deny this proposal because of the thinking of the commissioners who sat in your chairs 16 years ago, but I ask you today to uphold your responsibility as commissioners to serve the citizens of Denver by administrating the
your 2 minutes
requirements
is
of
up.
the landmark ordinance.
Thank you very much. Next. Have a seat. Give us your name and.
My name is Paul Brookring. I grew up in Denver, and some of my fondest childhood memories are visiting downtown with my family. And with my father's modest income, these outings, whether to public or cultural events, were a significant part of our lives. We visited the Civic Center often, attending free concerts and performances at the open air Greek Theater. The exposure to Denver's urban fabric and the Greek Theater classical design undoubtedly influenced my decision to become an architect. The Civic Center has remained an invaluable free resource for all Denver residents, making it accessible for families to enjoy and learn from. Now, as an architect and parent, I have continued this tradition by bringing my children and grandchildren to the Civic Center to share the same experiences and stories. My granddaughter has even expressed a desire to become a landscape architect, inspired in part by these real-life encounters in classical design, far more impactful than what a textbook could offer. The proposed reconstruction of the Greek Theater with its changes to the historic orientation, slope seating, and addition of a top golf type out-of-context alien canopy structure that would irreversibly alter the Greek Theater historic integrity. This theater is a living textbook of classic architecture and a vital educational tool for future generations. Its destruction would mean the loss of an irreplaceable piece of Denver's cultural heritage, a rare jewel in the registry of National Historic Landmarks. The crown jewel Civic Center Park is owned by the citizens of Denver. As caretakers, it is our responsibility to preserve and protect this historic masterpiece for future generations. Once lost, it cannot be recovered. I urge you to please vote no on this proposed design. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, next.
Yeah, I'm Scott Holder. I am president of the City Park West RNL. I'm not representing the RNO specifically today, but these are issues that impact us directly. I'm here against the Civic Center plans as they stand at this point in time. My concerns are specific to those outlined in the Historic Denver letter dated 5 November. Namely, before approval is granted, there's a lot of finalization of the proposed canopy, the materials, the technical things that they outlined in that letter. Given the history of the site, it's important that any redesign be an outright home run in order to attract visitors while maintaining the integrity of the existing structures and the intent of the previous design guidelines. The perception of this area, rightly or wrongly, is a strong influence as to whether or not city residents feel it's a place they want to visit. If that perception didn't have the kind of tinge that we've all referenced today, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation. Although outside the scope of LPC, the impact of the proposed project has impacts throughout the city. Again, as president of an RNO that's literally part of the customer base because of our accessibility to this via walking and cycling, I view a project like this as an important aspect of our own neighborhood life. And unless this project is a home run, no amount of if we build it, they will come. Thinking will change who goes to Civic Center or why. Again, that's outside of your scope, but it's an inescapable context when considering a project in its current state and the objections raised by others. Aside from those technical points submitted by Historic Denver that need resolution prior to approval, I think there are enough questions from enough parties about the current state of the design that should give all of you pause to reconsider. Thus, now is not the time to approve this application.
Thank you, sir. All right, next. And then give us your name.
Back where the seat was.
That's okay, I forgot you were in the.
Different from when you were commissioner.
Yeah, right, is it, yeah. Right, yeah, and you were in the back of the room, you couldn't see what was going on here. Please give us your name and you'll have 2 minutes to make your comment.
Thank you. Afternoon. My name is Amy Zimmer Ashton. I'm an architectural historian and former commission member from 2012 to 2019. Also participated in the development of the design guidelines for Civic Center back in 2008. The Denver Preservation Ordinance and Civic Center design guidelines have been developed to protect our historic Civic Center from changes that would destroy and adversely affect contributing features. The proposed changes to the stage, plaza, and open-air seating will result in demolition and irreversible removal of historic fabric. The ordinance and design guidelines also require new features must be subordinate to the park's existing contributing historic features, which the proposed canopy fails to do by enclosing a space intended to be open. Additionally, the mass and scale of the proposed lighting equipment and digital displays have not been fully evaluated, leaving uncertainties regarding their impact on the site's character. Justification of demolition requires that removal not compromise the site's integrity, referring to the structure's ability to convey its historic, geographic, architectural, or cultural significance. The proposed changes would jeopardize the Greek theater's integrity, which is critical for preserving its historical value. As the only national historic landmark in Denver, the Civic Center holds exceptional national significance. Fewer than 1% of National Register listed resources are national historic landmarks, and such status should carry great weight in evaluating proposed changes. Recent delisting of Chicago's Soldier Field due to inappropriate modifications highlights the risks of altering landmark sites. Any alterations to the Civic Center, including the Greek Theater, must preserve its integrity to avoid negative impacts such as delisting or loss of contributing status. I thank the applicant for their dedication to the future of Civic Center. However, the preservation of this nationally recognized landmark deserves further consideration, and I urge the commission to vote no on the changes as proposed.
Thank you very much. Next. Wait, well, okay, one more, okay. It's like, wait. Probably know the drill by this time.
Hi, I'm Phil Steinhauer. I'm a landscape architect and contractor here in Colorado. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on one of Denver's most iconic landmarks. My connection to the Civic Center Park is personal, as you can see by the photo. My grandfather was superintendent of parks during its construction and planted the first tree there in 1914. Working alongside Mayor Spear to bring this visionary design of the Civic Center to life. The proposal, in my opinion, before you threatens the park's historic integrity, particularly the Central Promenade's intended composition, calls for the removal of mature blue spruce, white fir, and Scotch pine near the Greek Theater. Trees that can contribute to the park's character and function as a green oasis. Replacing these with additional paved pathways, a food truck plaza, and gravel surfaces will exacerbate the heat island effect and diminish the park's value of the respite in an urban space. Furthermore, the proposed elliptical pathways clash with the park's historic geometries, and covering the original granite planters at the base of the colonnade of civic benefactors undermines the role in connecting the theater to its outdoor setting. These planters are essential to the visitor experience, anchoring the theater within the park's design. I urge you to deny this proposal and instead uphold the Civic Center design guidelines to ensure that any changes honor the legacy and significance of this national landmark.
Thank you, sir. All right.
My phone's just told me my heart has been at an elevated rate for the past few moments. So I may as well do this.
It is well.
I have a script, but this
And
feels like
you know the drill. so-
absolutely. I have a script, but this feels like an off-script moment. John Deffinville, CEO of Historic Denver. This is a very strange situation to be in because my job is to save things. My predecessor's job for the past 54 years has been to save things. And I sit here before you in support of this project and in full support of this project with the condition we outline in our letter. Why? Because we've realized throughout that 54 years that the most effective way to safeguard our historic treasures is to ensure they're activated by people who love them, people who are drawn to them, because that ensures that that love and that profound affinity for the park will retain in future generations. There's been a few quotes that I was somewhat interested in today, and I'd just like to bring up. First of all, build it and they will come. Actually, two of my favorite quotes. Build it and they will come, and then the Daniel Burnham quotes, make no little plans. I would say we don't have to go on that risk about building it and they will come, because they did come. Generations ago, the Greek Theater was at the heart of Denver gathering life. Now really it is an overflow space for events of mass outpouring of emotions, such as gun rallies, women's rights rallies, abortion rallies. That's when I've been there. I have not been there for a specific performance within that specific enclosed venue, which originally was designed to be. This, whilst being a big decision, is what big, great cities make. I was in London when elevators were put through the 13th century Trafalgar Square to create accessibility. Preservation to the detriment of wheelchair users and the ambulant disabled isn't preservation, it's exclusion. We are in full support of this project with the caveat and the condition that we put in our letter. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Do you see another hand? Please join us. Good afternoon, sir. If you could please give us your name and we'll give you 2 minutes to make your presentation.
Good afternoon. My name is Gary Petrie, and I'm here to express my strong opposition to the current proposal to substantially alter the historic Greek Theater complex. As a former commissioner and preservation architect with more than 50 years of experience, I believe the proposal violates intent statements 2A, 2B, 2D, and 2E of Denver's preservation guidelines. These relate to keeping the integrity of historic structures, maintaining the details that convey the character and significance of historic properties, and limiting damage to historic features with the least amount of intervention. Guideline 2.10 A through D requires that its distinctive, stylistic, and architectural features are preserved. The proposed design adversely affects and destroys the essential character defining features of the original design, which was deliberately patterned after the Greek theaters of the past and specifically selected by its original architects, Marion and Norton. The present proposal advocates the destruction of more than 50% of the original composition. I realize that previous repairs have resulted in the careful replacement of some of the original materials, but the original configuration and form of the Greek theater was respected and retained by those repairs in substantial compliance with the Secretary of Interior standards. And it was recognized in the proceedings of the Landmark Commission's meeting of August 6, 2002. This proposal undermines the thoughtful consideration and action of previous preservationists and the Landmark Commissions. The proposal violates the specific design guidelines and violates the spirit and specifics of Denver's Municipal Code, Section 30, the Landmark Ordinance. Please do not approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Yes.
Thank you so much.
Hi, please have a seat, give us your name and you'll have 2 minutes.
Whenever you're ready.
I was just waiting for the handout. It's gonna go quickly.
Yeah, please begin.
Hello, my name is Tommy Matthews. I live in Denver. Some of my points are best understood visually. You each have a packet titled Why a Greek Theater in front of you to follow along. Page 2 highlights that a Greek theater is a type of outdoor theater dating back to ancient times, featuring a flat, circular area called an orchestra at its center. In the 20th century, the Greek theater form was adapted as focal points for community gathering and to elevate the arts in American culture. In 1919, Denver built a uniquely open form of the Greek theater. At the top of page 3, you'll see the typical elements of the Greek theater, which include the stage or scene, orchestra, that flat circular area, and the theatron seating with aisles. Denver's Greek theater clearly incorporates all these elements. Page 4 includes excerpts from the 2009 Civic Center Design Guidelines, clearly stating through text and diagrams that the open-air amphitheater, including the plaza and seating, is a contributing feature of the Greek theater complex. Please make special note, a contributing feature, not non-historic, as the applicant is seeking to suggest. Page 5 makes it clear that the design guidelines explicitly forbid any new elements from obscuring or damaging contributing features. The proposal before you would bury, obscure, damage, and outright demolish the plaza, seating, and stage of the Greek theater. This is unacceptable under the law. You have the responsibility to stop this today. Please make a motion to deny the proposed demolition. Failing to act will result in the theater's destruction and set a dangerous precedent, allowing Denver's design guidelines to be blatantly ignored. I strongly urge you to deny the demolition of Denver's Greek Theater.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hello, I am Eric Lazari. I serve as the Executive Director of the Civic Center Conservancy. I reside on South Monroe Street in the Corey Merrill neighborhood. I have served as the Executive Director for 13 years of the Civic Center Conservancy, working 24/7, 365 to ensure the ideals of the 2005 Civic Center Master Plan, 2009 Civic Center Design Guidelines are upheld in both the daily activation in future use of the Greek Theater. The Conservancy enthusiastically supports the proposals from Denver Parks and Recreation as they are in compliance with the 2005 Master Plan and 2009 Design Guidelines. One of the critical recommendations in the master plan was for the Greek Theater to become an activation node for Civic Center Park, something that would consistently draw people into the park and where they could gather as a community. Over the past 20 years, we have seen large events happen in the park. What we have not seen is the small scale, community scale activations that you have seen several of our cultural partners talk about today. At most, the Greek Theater is activated 10 to 15 times a year. As we talk to the community that would use this space, we hear that there are many reasons, both the form and the accessibility, that make it difficult to use. The Greek can be prohibitively expensive because of the nature of the equipment that you need to bring in, and it becomes a barrier to community scaled activation. I've been an observer and a participant as DPR has gone with the design team through this process. They have thoughtfully and sensitively balanced preserving the history of this space while evolving the park to meet the needs of 21st century Denver. It was no small task, and the project has benefited greatly from the leadership of the author of the 2009 Design Guidelines, Tina Bishop, and counsel from the Historic Advisory Committee, which is included.
Sir, you're out of your 2 minutes.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. All right, next. Certainly.
Hello, I'm Peter Park, Denver resident, board member of the Civic Center Conservancy and adjunct associate professor at the University of Colorado College of Architecture and Planning. I'm here to speak in support of the staff recommendation for approval of this proposal. As Denver's first manager of CBD, I was involved in the 2005 Civic Center District Plan, Park Master Plan, and the 2009 Civic Center Design Guidelines, documents that serve as the basis and context for this conversation. Common to all of these efforts was support for, of course, maintaining the physical integrity of Civic Center, but also recognition of the need to enhance daily activation of and accessibility to the park. With the anticipated growth of downtown, it was a given that Civic Center needed to evolve. These documents were prepared specifically to establish priorities for guiding that evolution, not only to protect this important asset, but also shape it into a more recognized, utilized, and cherished place. The overarching intent was to evolve Civic Center to become a more relevant place for more people on a daily basis as a means of securing its future. All great cities and the buildings and monuments that shape their public realm evolve over time. They need to survive. I believe the design strategies for the proposed canopy and Greek Theater ground plane changes meet the design guidelines in ways that are world class. In the proposal to flip the stage, I see similarities to how IMP's new entrance to the Louvre located a glass pyramid away from the historic structure and introduced a modern form in that historic Parisian Plus in ways that allow the original building where it meets the sky to still register and read. The proposed changes to the ground plane of the Greek Theater stage and stairs provide universal access and enhance the iconic structure as a gateway for everyone to experience the cultural access. This approach reminds me of how, as John mentioned, Foster Partners redesigned a Trafalgar Square, improved access, cutting through the historic balustrade to align along the original axis of Trafalgar Square and the National Portrait Gallery. These are ways in which we can imagine functional capacity of historic places evolving to become more relevant and to more people today and in the future. Design approaches that carefully and at the same time boldly alter historic places and actually elevate the profound relevance of our historic assets. And I believe that's what the design team has proposed for our Civic Center. Thank you for the opportunity to express my support.
Of course. Next. Certainly.
Hello, my name is Tom Simmons. I'm a historian, Denver resident, and the co-author of 19 National Historic Landmark nominations, including the 2012 nomination for the Denver Civic Center. The Greek Theater is a contributing resource within the local and national history. Any change which adversely impacts the historic integrity of any element of the theater, including its plaza and seating, impacts the theater as a whole. The theater presently retains historic integrity, as these historic and current photographs indicate, but this proposal has a catastrophic impact on its design, destroying its historic integrity and rendering it non-contributing resource within the Civic Center district. If this plan had been realized at the time we prepared the National Historic Landmark nomination, we would have classified the Greek Theater as non-contributing, and questions would have been raised over the eligibility of Civic Center as a whole. Theaters are intentionally designed to have a front and a back. What change could negatively impact the design of a historic theater than gutting its interior, reorienting it 180 degrees, and building new seating and a stage? Please think about the magnitude of this proposed change. Someone talked about a delicate balance. This is a chainsaw, not a scalpel. This is not the type of modification contemplated or permitted by the design guidelines. Since the Greek Theater plays a critical role in the Denver Civic Center concept and its north-south cultural access, this also erodes the overall integrity of Civic Center and impacts Denver's position as, quote, one of the most complete and intact examples of early 20th century Civic Center design nationwide. Civic Center is the only National Historic Landmark within Denver, one of just 2,651 throughout the country, and its status as a nationally significant.
Your time's up. Thank you. Next.
Is that everyone in person? Because we're gonna move on to virtual now.
Yep. All right, Taylor, is anybody online that would like to make a public comment? Okay, all right. All right, let's start.
So Janine, I think you should be able to unmute yourself.
Oh, can you hear me? We can hear you. Please give us your name and you'll have 2 minutes to tell us your comment.
Great, thank you. My name is Janine Bragg, and I am a fairly new employee at Arts and Venues. I am now the Director of Public Art, but today I really want to speak to you as a 30-year resident of the metro area, current resident of Denver, who's very involved in the theatrical community. And I speak today in favor of this plan and in favor of accessibility. While I certainly appreciate the historic nature of this monument and wouldn't want to see anything done that would permanently diminish that, I believe these changes are in keeping with that historic intent, which is to gather the community and also to present performance. And as a member of the theater community, I echo the comments of the other performing artists who have spoke today. It's a difficult space right now for people to perform in. It works okay for political gatherings and announcements and that sort of thing, but in terms of an artistic context, it lacks a lot. And so I'm just speaking in favor of this proposal in terms of it providing more access, both to those who have different types of mobility needs and to different types of performing artists. Right now, you might be able to do a large music event there or a musical theater production, but the smaller theater productions and those sorts of things, it cannot really accommodate those needs well. So I think this is an innovative design. I was really excited when I first learned about it. And I just want to say that I'm fully in support of this. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, who do we have next, Taylor?
I just promoted Christopher. Christopher, you should be able to unmute yourself, and if you want to turn on your camera as well.
Great, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you very much. Please give us your name and you'll have 2 minutes to give us your comment.
Thank you very much. My name is Christopher Mansour. I'm the president of the board of directors for the Capitol Hill United Neighborhoods. CHUN is the RNO that represents the greater Capitol Hill area in Denver since 1969. CHUN has strong ties to the proposed Civic Center Park renovation. We are supportive of the proposed investment in the park with careful consideration to its potential use and its history. Between 1977 and 2018, CHUN operated the People's Fair, which drew hundreds of thousands of people to the Civic Center Park for our annual spring celebration of urban living. While CHUN is not prepared to weigh in on the proposed specifics at this time, we are ready to agree in principle to the need for this renovation to be considered. Civic Center Park needs to be the well-maintained and vital centerpiece our city's surrounding cultures, institutions deserve. Currently, the park is underutilized. We think the time is right for careful change. Besides some of the festivals and occasional events, the park is rarely activated as an essential public space, and in fact is often seen as unsafe, uninviting, and unclean. We think that careful consideration in creating a good human experience while expanding step-free access is key to maintaining and meeting current needs of residents and tourists alike. We recognize that the Civic Center Park is a U.S. National Historic Landmark and are grateful that the Landmark Commission will approach this renovation with the preservation as well as activation of the park in mind. As the plans continue to develop and the park use is considered, we would welcome participation from our Capitol Hill community who care deeply about the future of this park. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. All right, who's next?
I'm sorry, I'm gonna mispronounce your name, but you should be able to unmute.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Please give us your name and you'll have 2 minutes.
I'm Tariana Navas Neves, Deputy Director for Arts and Venues and an art historian by trade, and I support these thoughtful improvements that align with Civic Center's historic vision as a premier cultural gathering space. We cannot consider Civic Center without connecting its vision and use to the original City Beautiful ideal of civic life, culture, and beauty. The design guidelines specifically state that Civic Center plays 2 important roles: Denver's premier public square, housing art and culture, and emphasize that we should encourage the continued use of the theater as Civic Center's premier performance venue. The design team has shown remarkable thoughtfulness in honoring historic preservation and values of inclusion and accessibility. They've ensured all modifications are compatible with its neoclassical aesthetic, yet clearly of its own time, as required by the guidelines. The accessibility improvements are key. The guidelines clearly state that Civic Center will be accessible to all and specifically allow for modifications to provide universally accessible routes to the theater. The improvements directly support the guidelines intent to enhance the park's role as a place for daily activities while respecting its historic character. We have our ability to program the Greek theater is limited, so these enhancements will allow us to expand the diversity of our cultural programming, create more accessible arts experiences while honoring the venue's historic role. The guidelines specifically allow for modifications that enhance its use as a performance venue, compatible with its historic design. To close, this balanced approach to preservation, activation, and improvements perfectly align with and will be key to help fulfill Edward Bennett's original 1917 vision of Civic Center as Denver's great central space, ensuring that it remains relevant, welcoming, and accessible for future generations. I cannot think of a better opportunity to culturally activate our beloved park by enhancing spaces that will bring joy to the people while honoring, celebrating, and preserving the historic beauty of Civic Center. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next.
Olivia, I'm trying to promote you to panelist. If you'd like to speak, can you please accept that? Okay, I'm gonna move on to Marissa, but we'll come back to you, Olivia. Okay, Marissa, you should be able to,
There you go. Hi.
Hi,
Please give us your name and you'll have 2 minutes.
I'm Marissa Forbes, and I support the Civic Center Greek Theater Project as a Denver resident, a creative professional, and a mother. I believe that revitalizing the Greek Theater and the Great Promenade will improve our downtown aesthetically, as well as make it safer, more accessible, and increase commerce around the park. The Greek Theater improvements would provide a flexible space for a huge variety of educational and entertaining activations. With the space that accommodates smaller but higher quality performances, people will come, especially as it becomes accessible to all. As a spoken word artist and a playwright who is I'm active in several creative communities in the Denver metro area as a performer and organizer. I know that creative and educational entities like Art from Ashes, Athena's Project, and Community Literature Initiative, plus many more, are really craving inclusive spaces to come together to showcase our works and promote our communities in order to create more connections. As the structure currently stands, it is beautiful, but it is not functional. And I believe that the integrity of the historical facets will remain, but also bring it into the future to restore it for other generations. To me, preserving a landmark, especially one with performance and gathering space purposes, means using it. This project will inject life back into the Greek Theater and encourage more visitors to the promenade while also bringing support for the businesses around the park. As a mother, I especially support this project because I think it breathes life into the city and it will help secure the beauty and the culture of Denver for my children and their future. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next.
Olivia, I'm trying to promote you again to panelist. If you'd like to speak, if you could just accept that.
Are you able to hear me?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Okay, all right. Please give us your name and you'll have 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Olivia Samard, and I recently graduated with a master's degree in historic preservation from CU Denver. I'm here to tell you all why you should vote against this proposal. As we know, Civic Center is a National Historic Landmark. Therefore, it is essential to conduct a thorough review and confirm compliance of the proposal with the Secretary of the Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties. Specific attention must be given to the subject of reversibility for any new architectural features and interventions. As codified in the Standards for Rehabilitation, Standard Number 10 states, new additions and adjacent or related new construction shall be undertaken in such a manner that if removed in the future, the essential form and integrity of the historic property and its environment would be unimpaired. I feel the proposed design conflicts with these standards and the design must be remediated to meet the standards before ever being approved. I ask you all, if SOI standards are sidestepped for a National Historic Landmark, what does that mean for the protection of the rest of our Denver landmarks? And for these reasons, I ask all members of the Denver Landmark Preservation Commission to vote against this proposal. Thank you.
Olivia, thank you. All right, next.
Elena, I'm not sure. Okay.
Hello? Hello?
Are you there, Elaine?
Yes, can you hear me?
Okay, yeah. Please give us your name and you'll have 2 minutes.
All right. Elaine A. Sarch. I am founder of the Civic Center Conservancy, a past member of Historic Denver, as well as a participant in the Civic Center Master Plan of 2005 and the 2009 Design Guidelines. I support the Studio Gang plan for Civic Center Park. I'm excited about what the plan will do, not only for the activation of this most important public space, but for the city of Denver. What has fueled my passion and those I've worked with is the potential of this park. This plan honors the park's historic legacy as being the civic and cultural center of our city and preserving the architectural and historic integrity of its buildings and the hardscapes. This plan addresses accessibility, sanitation, and safety. And for the first time in its 100-year history, it allows for a much wider array of performances and events while connecting Civic Center to the city and the central business district of downtown. I fully support the project and the enhancements to the park, which will bring vibrancy and daily activity while keeping the historic elements pristine, beautiful, and respected as the historic landmark it has been designated. We are at a perfect time with wonderful staff in both the city and in the Conservancy and support of many community members to go ahead with this plan. And there was a very stringent public process to secure Studio Gang as the architects to bring this forward. And I think we have a wonderful opportunity and I'd like to go forward with it. And I'm sure many of you would. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next.
Okay. Last call for any public comment on any agenda item today. I know it's all been mostly Civic Center, but I don't see any more hand raises or any other items. So if there's no more, we're going to close the public comment period. I think we can move on. Okay. We're gonna take a quick 5-minute break so a commissioner can figure out some scheduling.
Thanks, everybody. Sorry about that. It happens.
Stretch.
Yes. Sorry. All right, so we've had our 5-minute break. We are now headed on. So public comments are done for today. So that portion, I'm closing that portion of the meeting. We are going on to the consent agenda. These are routine design review items recommended for commission approval without discussion. Applicants with items passed on the consent agenda should coordinate separately with your landmark preservation staff to receive a certificate of appropriateness. There is no public comment for consent agenda items. The chair will announce the consent agenda by address. The chair asks if the commissioners desire to remove any item from the consent agenda. Removed items will shift then to the design review agenda. Commission members can announce ex parte contacts and conflicts of interest on any items. Commission will make a motion and vote. And if your project is approved on consent, you may leave the meeting. You don't have to leave the meeting. You can spend the rest of your afternoon with us if you like. But if you have other things to do, you are welcome to leave said meeting. All right, we have 2 items on said consent agenda today. One is 2025-COA-030 at 314 West 5th Avenue and 2025-TAXC-003 at 135 North Humboldt Street. Commissioners, are there any desire to take anything off said agenda? You okay with everything? Any ex parte or conflicts of interest? All right, then let's hear a motion from the floor, please.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you, Nick. Second?
Sorry.
I think Larry got that one. All right. All in favor, aye? Aye. Any opposed, nay? All right, staff, thank you very much. The consent agenda has been approved as presented. And like I said earlier, any of you joining us for the consent agenda in person or online, you're free to leave the meeting and you just meet with your landmark preservation staff person later to get your certificate. All right, we will move on to the design review now. This is how it works. The chair will announce the design review items on agenda in order by address. Commission members will announce any ex parte contacts or conflicts of interest. Staff will introduce the application and make a recommendation, then that's typically limited to 10 minutes. Commissioners can question staff. The applicant presentation typically limited to 10 minutes. Commissioners may question the applicant. Staff will clarify if necessary, the commission will deliberate, and the commission will make a motion and vote. So as you all are very aware, I'm sure, our very first design review item is 2024-COA-832 101 West 14th Avenue Parkway, the Greek Theater. Our staff person is Brittany Bryant. So
I did just want to bring attention to the fact that I have worked with Mundus Bishop on other projects. Mundus Bishop is part of the design team on this project. I am no way involved in this project and have not spoken to them about it, but just wanted to be super clear that I have that relationship.
Thank you
Yeah,
very much.
Madam Chair, I'd like to echo that. Spectrum, the company I'm a part owner in, has done a lot of work in Civic Center and for Denver Parks and Rec. Not been involved in this effort,
Okay.
and I don't believe that affects my ability to be able to be impartial, both on the record for last meeting and this one.
Commissioners, thank you. Any other commissioners? Okay, then let's go to our staff person, Brittany.
Okay, our first project of today is alterations to the Greek Theater, which is in the Civic Center Historic District. The Civic Center Historic District, the local designation, has a period of significance in the design guidelines from 1909 to 1979. Here you can see the location of the Greek Theater on a local designation map. So the Greek Theater is the heart of civic life within this city of Denver, with the Colorado State Capitol on the east side and the city and county building on the west side. However, it is also served as important gathering spaces for most important cultural and civic events throughout the state, including remembrance vigils, political speeches, climate protests, and many annual events that include Pride, A Taste of Colorado, parades, the Christmas lights display at the city and county building, and also celebrations such as winning the Super Bowl. Civic Center is part of a series of improvements proposed by Mayor Spear as part of the City Beautiful movement. In 1916, Spear hired Edward Bennett, a protege of Frederick Law Olmsted, to design, or sorry, did not read that correctly. A protege of Daniel Burnham to design the park. Bennett combined ideas from previous plans that included the Charles Mulford Robertson and Frederick Law Olmsted plan. And he did add the Greek Theater, the Voorhees Memorial, the Still Pond, and the realignment of West Colfax and 14th Avenue around the park. The park officially opened in 1919. So here are just some historic images of the park. In 1974, the park was listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Here you can see the boundary for that National Register listing. In 1976, it was designated as a Denver landmark. The boundary between the Denver landmark and the National Register is slightly different, so I do want to point that out. And then finally, in 2012, it was listed as a National Historic Landmark, and that boundary is also different from the National Register, the Denver Landmark, and the Denver Landmark listing. But generally, they all include the park. Civic Center is one of 2 National Historic Landmarks, I'll say loosely within the city of Denver. And I say that because Red Rocks is owned by the city of Denver and is our other National Historic Landmark, but as we all know, it's not actually in Denver. So Civic Center has been working on the Next 100 plan, and this was released in 2022 to bring to life the 2005 master plan. There were 4 areas that were identified as part of this Next 100, and those areas are Bannock Street, the Greek Theater, a central promenade space, and then a central gathering space that hasn't yet been defined as to where exactly that would be. So these are the 4 main areas that this Next 100 plan is focusing on, and the Greek Theater is the first step in that Next 100 plan. So here you have the existing site plan and the proposed, the existing site plan and areas where the park is currently inaccessible. And I'm sorry, I'm not sure why this isn't exactly fitting to the screen, but there are a number of inaccessible points within the current park that prevents a north-south transition down the central promenade. If you want to enter the park accessibly, you have to do it off of Bannock Street or off of Broadway on the east-west sides of the park, and you cannot traverse across the park from the north or south through the central promenade. So I have photos to show those inaccessible points. So here are those inaccessible points. Again, they are just stairs that have been incorporated into the design of the park. So they're principally at the forecourt of the Seal Pond, which is this upper image, the stairs on the south side of the Greek Theater from 14th, the stairs in the balustrade wall on the north side of the Greek Theater, and then stairs from the elevated kind of platform down into the bowl seating of the Greek Theater, the stage structure itself that also connects with the stair image above, and then stair pathways again in the balustrade wall that previously did have historic pathways, and those pathways have been removed. So those are the inaccessible points that this plan is proposing to address. The Civic Center design guidelines do talk about creating accessibility and reactivating the activity nodes within the park. So this proposed plan will increase accessibility north-south through the park by demolishing the historic stairs on the south side of the Greek Theater structure, covering the non-historic stage, covering the non-historic seating, and minor demolition to the historic planters within the Greek Theater, creating an accessible route north-south that will tie into a new elliptical pathway that reconnects with the stairs and the balustrade wall. Staff would like to note that the stairs and the balustrade wall and the handrails are also non-historic, but the balustrade wall is itself historic. So that will allow to move north-south through the park and through the Greek Theater by recreating these accessible spaces. So that is proposed for the accessibility. So here are the Civic Center design guidelines, which talk about areas of major pedestrian circulation, pedestrian-oriented intersections, and surrounding streets. So again, I just want to show that the guidelines do reinforce this north-south access as being a major area of pedestrian circulation that is, again, currently not ADA accessible, and this plan will allow for that ADA accessibility. So here are some historic images of the park, and again, the applicant is proposing to reestablish these elliptical pathways that connect into the balustrade wall and provide additional circulation on either side of the central promenade. As you can see from these historic images, these pathways were part of the original plan of the park and did create additional routes and pathways into the park. Staff are supportive of the reestablishment of this historic circulation path. However, we feel the elliptical pathways do help identify them as new and do maintain that symmetry that was originally created with the City Beautiful movement, but also allowing it to be identifiable as new by providing that slight elliptical shape to it versus that straight north-south access that was historically present. So again, the guidelines do support reinforcing areas of pedestrian circulation and strengthening the central promenade. Additionally, the central promenade will have planters that are from the 1990s removed, and that will become a more open space. A new food court paved area will exist on just the south side of the McNichols building, which is historically the Carnegie Library. There are also changes proposed to some of the planting areas, but those are mostly landscape, and our purview is limited there as we do not have purview over plantings or trees or anything of that nature. All we have purview over is any hardscape element that requires a building or zoning permit. So for example, the pathways and those alterations there. So looking at what the Civic Center design guidelines call for, they do identify primary areas of influence. And the primary area of influence is the horizontal space where improvements may occur. And that is principally located in the central promenade space of Civic Center Park that you can see here around the curve of the balustrade wall that is located on the east side of the park. There are secondary areas of influences that alterations can also occur in, but the height and scale of those alterations is limited in those areas. So those secondary areas of influence include the Greek theater, and all changes that we will be reviewing today are within this second area of influence where changes are allowed. But there are also some areas around the historic Carnegie Library, and then also around what is the south planting area as well. The guidelines generally encourage maintaining open space between the central promenade and the Voorhees Memorial, and reinforcing that space. So again, that is what the guidelines call for. So this is not the first time that the commission has reviewed this project. In January of 2021, the commission did have a discussion on alterations to the Greek theater, and it principally included this canopy structure that covered over the Greek theater and a new ADA ramp on the south side of the Greek theater, cutting into the stairs. Again, this was just a discussion item, but generally speaking, the commission was favorable to these proposed alterations that you see on the screen. However, as the project evolved, Studio Gang was hired onto the project following the initial concept submittal, and many other options were looked at in terms of providing covered space for the Greek theater, and you can see some of those options here on the screen. A big drawback of these options is that they directly attach to the Greek theater, and significantly altered the perception of the Greek theater structure itself. It also did not address some of the other challenges that the Greek theater presents in terms of ADA accessibility, where sunlight is in terms of the orientation of the Greek theater in Colorado. So these two options were rejected, and instead the Studio Gang had decided to flip the orientation of the theater and create a new stage and stage structure on the north side of the Greek theater. So again, what that was intended to address was the lack of accessibility that we previously looked at, the audience sightlines, which has seating mainly to the side of the theater, and all temporary seating to get a straight eye line to the stage is all temporary. Additionally, the sun issues that we experience here in Colorado with orientation towards the south, that's where we get our most sun, and that does put sunlight in the face of the audience at all times of the day. Additionally, it does limit how much audience can be within that bowl space, which is still quite large. But the applicant did decide to switch the theater to allow for the sunlight to be at the viewer's back at all times, to create more seating that has a direct view onto the stage, and then again, to create those ADA accessible routes that we saw previously. So in terms of alterations to the Greek theater, the applicant has identified all historic contributing features that will be protected as part of this plan. Alterations to all non-historic materials, and then alterations to historic materials. So principally speaking, the Greek theater will have a new bowl that will cover the existing non-historic seating and paving in the paving space. Alterations to the historic fabric is limited to partial demolition of the top of the planter walls within the Greek theater, which you can see here on this plan. Demolition of the historic granite stairs on the south side of the theater, which will be salvaged and reinstalled into the new walkway. We will look at that in the phase 2 design details materials. So right now we're just looking at the phase 1 mass form and context for the alterations of this new stage and reorientation of the Greek theater. So we're not looking at the specifics of the hardscaping materials, but we do know that those stairs are proposed to be salvaged and reused. And then minor alterations to the knee walls for the historic stairs that are within the balustrade wall. So principally, changes will occur to non-historic materials that were modified and have already been altered and replaced. And principally speaking, those materials will be covered. There will be minimal demolition to historic fabric. All the fluted columns, the colonnade of benefactor, the balustrade or lighted columns will be preserved. The lion fountains will be preserved. The balustrade wall will be preserved. The lion statues will be preserved. And the Allen True murals will also be preserved as part of this project. Those are all identified as character defining features within the Civic Center design guidelines, which encourage preservation before any alterations. And again, there are no alterations proposed. So looking at the historic materials that again will be altered, we do have these historic granite steps on the south side of the theater that will be demolished. Those are original. The stage that you see here, this is not original. This was replaced in 2004, and I do have some historic photos to talk about that. But this area here will be covered, so it will remain intact. The design guidelines do talk about covering historic and non-historic materials, so we do feel that that is in line with the guidelines and the intent of the guidelines, as it has minimal impact on historic fabric there and will remain below the new bowl seating and ADA accessible pathway. So here are some historic images of the stage. You can see the original construction. Currently, the stage is reinforced with rebar and iron, so that is not an original element. Again, that will be covered as part of this project. Here we're looking at the planter walls. A small portion of these planter walls will be demolished, again, to allow for that new ADA accessible pathway and that flat grade from 14th into the Civic Center space and all the way to the north. So again, that is a small portion of the top of the planter walls on either side of the seating that will be demolished. The rest of the planter wall will be covered and remain intact beneath the new bowl seating. This door here will be demolished as part of this project. We do not find that the door is original, but the opening is, so we're not super concerned about that demolition of the door. In terms of alterations to the balustrade wall, again, these stairs in the balustrade wall and hand railing are not original historic fabric. Those will be covered and demolished as part of this project to help reestablish those historic pathways that are ADA accessible. Currently, these just die into the grass. There's not actually a pathway here anymore, so those have been removed at some point. And staff are supportive of those alterations as we feel it reestablishes historic circulation patterns. A small portion of the side walls will be protected, and it will be reversible when they add a ramp to the space to create that accessibility. These are the stairs and railings on the forecourt of the Voorhees Memorial. Again, those are not original. Those will be modified to create those ADA accessible pathways. And then finally, these below grade stairs on the east side of the Greek Theater will be modified again to allow for an accessible elevator into the space. We do not have purview over below grade alterations, so that's not within our purview at this time. So here is a current image of aerial image of the Greek Theater, and here is a historic image of the Greek Theater. Staff would like to note that this seating has already been altered and was reviewed and approved to be replaced by the commission because it was severely deteriorated. So that includes all of the paving in the bowl and the seating. And although most of the seating was replaced in kind, and so was the paving material, there were slight modifications to this design. So principally, the number of rows is still retained from the historic configuration. However, the seating did get closer to these light fixtures that are in the park. And additionally, Historically, the seating came further around into the central promenade space, and now that seating is cut off right through that central promenade path. So there have already been modifications to the bowl area as it was severely deteriorated. And those were reviewed and approved by the commission. So this is non-historic fabric that will be covered with the new bowl seating. So here is the new proposed bowl seating. So again, this project is proposing to reorient the Greek Theater to the north and construct a new stage and canopy structure kind of between the stairs that currently exist to allow access down to the central promenade from the raised platform of the Greek Theater. All of the alterations will occur within the historic bowl, so the seating is still within its historic location, but instead of facing south, it will now face north. It is still tiered seating that was original to the tiered seating design of the Greek Theater. Again, it's just in a different orientation than it was previously. So the new stage structure is 2 feet in height off of the central promenade. It does have a footprint of 65 by 52, and it will fit nicely between the stair structure that exists there. Here you can see those ADA accessible pathways, which are 15 feet wide. That again will just come along the Greek Theater, cover the historic planters, and then reconnect with new elliptical pathways through the stairs at the balustrade wall. Part of this project does include a new elevator house that is located to the east. Here you can see that footprint. It is 19 feet by 38 feet, 5 inches, and it is 16 inches in height. It will have a decorative screen on it that we will review in the phase 2 design detail phase, but it's pretty limited in its program. It will have a door on the west side to allow access into that space. So again, here are just some images of what those alterations will look like. Again, mostly focusing on that new ADA pathway that will hug around the inside of the Greek Theater, covering the historic planter boxes, which are here and involve a very partial demolition of the top of the planter box wall to create that continuous pathway that connects in with the balustrade wall, and then new elliptical pathways. There will also be ramping down into the new bowl seating, and we will look at the phase 2 design detail materials for this new bowl seating if this project is approved for phase 1, but essentially it will be covering the existing non-historic seating and paving materials. So here is an existing site photograph and a proposed design model. You can see that all of the seating that is proposed is going to be limited within that existing bowl form, and it will still be a tiered seating that is common to Greek theaters, which this was based off of historic Roman and Greek theater design. It is all within that same area and footprint, just simply covering non-historic fabric and reoriented to the north, and reinforcing that central promenade access. So here is the proposed canopy structure. It is 43 feet 6 inches in height, and it does somewhat align with datum line F, which is the top of the Greek Theater and the Voorhees Memorial. And that is at its highest point. So this does have a convex design that does create a kind of swoop that allows it to be subordinate to the Greek Theater. The new canopy structure is not in any way attached to the Greek Theater and is separated from the Greek Theater, so it could be removed at a later date, and the original Greek Theater returned as the primary stage presence if desired by Denver Parks and Rec. Again, we will look at the materials for this structure in the phase 2 design details. Right now, we're just looking at the placement, the form, and overall relationship to the mass and context of the Civic Center Historic District. So the guidelines do talk about aligning with the datum lines within the park, which are identified as human scale datum lines, which are AB. So that's generally anything from 12 to 20 feet in height. Datum line D, which is park kiosks and the bottom of the Voorhees Memorial. And then datum line F, which is the top of the Greek Theater and the Voorhees Memorial, which the structure does align to. And then we have larger datum lines within the park, which is the top of the city and county building cornice, and then the top of the obelisk. So it is subordinate to some of the datum lines within the park, but it does align with datum line F within the park. The bowl and stage itself are at the human scale datum lines. I also like to point out on this slide that the height of the lion statue areas is 16 feet in height, which does align with the proposed height of the elevator spaces as well, which this section is the opposite view from where the elevator structure is. So here is the proposed canopy structure. It has been designed to have clearance from the historic lighted columns, lighted balustrades, whichever one you would like to call them. Again, you can see how the canopy structure aligns with the datum line F, and it's only for a small expanse that it is hitting that 43 feet 6-inch datum line. Generally speaking, it is overall subordinate. There will be some new theater and rigging poles that are permanent as part of this. They are 20 feet in height. And then we do have our elevator house structure here, again, 16 feet in height, which does align with the lion fountain and colonnade of benefactors wall height. So that will have minimal visual impact on this proposed project and is of a limited scale. Here are just additional images of that elevator house, as the commission did have questions about this structure in the last review. So the applicant has provided additional information. Right now they're showing this kind of planting screen. Again, we will look at that in the phase 2 design detail phase, but it's a very simple boxy structure just on the east side of the colonnade of benefactors, aligning with that lion fountain height. So here are additional images of the canopy looking to the south towards the cultural complex. Again, the canopy structure is not attached to the Greek Theater or the historic lighted columns, and it does have a clearance of 1 foot. The clearance has been noted as 1 foot because the applicant has looked at other types of clearance, and if the clearance is increased, it does add additional mass and scale to the canopy structure itself. So it has been designed to keep the canopy as minimal in scale as possible, but as far away from the columns itself. But if the commission has additional questions about that, I would recommend that they direct those to the applicant. During the last review of this space, the commission did have questions about how this space would be used, and the applicant has provided information on that. Generally speaking, the bowl seating obviously will be there at all times, but there can be temporary seating added that will allow for 180 seats for small community events within the bowl and looking onto the new stage. This project also allows for allowing for the colonnade to be activated as part of seating. And while we won't look at like use permits or things of that nature, the applicant is proposing currently that this would be VIP seating. So it is seating that would allow views onto the new stage as well and activate that space. And then finally, for much larger events, this new stage would allow for activation on the north and south side of the stage. So it could be multi-use and functional there where both sides of the stage are engaged for larger events. The guidelines do talk about activating the central promenade and these spaces and using them as they have been historically used. Again, this has always been a theater space, so we do feel that this reinforces its historic use. It is still a theater in the round, although it is facing north instead of south with this new proposal. And then finally, I just have some views of the project proposal. So this is looking south into the cultural complex, and you can see how that new canopy structure engages with the new cultural complex. Here is another model images of the space looking north into downtown. And then finally, looking at the modifications to the South Plaza. So we're not looking at the South Plaza at this time, but again, it will create that ADA accessibility that is desperately needed to allow for north-south access from the cultural center into downtown that you cannot currently get through the park. Again, you have to go into the park on the east and west sides. And if you're on the central promenade, you cannot move north-south in an ADA accessible route. So our guidelines do encourage creating those accessible routes. So at this time, staff are recommending approval of this application. We do feel that is in compliance with the Civic Center design guidelines to provide ADA accessibility, minor alterations to historic fabric, and is mostly covering non-historic fabric, and is continuing its historic use as a Greek theater, and allowing for modifications that are compatible with the Beaux Arts architecture of the structure and of the park in general. So we are recommending approval of this project.
Brittany, thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions for our staff? Okay, great. All right, our applicants, are you ready to give your presentation? And just for everybody, they requested an extra 5 minutes, so there'll be a 15-minute presentation as opposed to the usual 10-minute. We thought, staff and I thought, because of the complexity and the interest in the project, that we should allow an extra 5 minutes. All right, so applicants, as you go up, please give your name and then you'll be given 15 minutes. And I will cut you off after those 15 minutes.
And if you could turn on the camera, Jenna, that would be helpful. And again, just so it's clear for all of our applicants, it's at the discretion of the commission to grant additional time to applicants. And I believe Julie has stated our reasons for why we're doing that.
All right, begin whenever you're ready.
All right, my name is Jenna Harris. I am a landscape architect and the Downtown Parks Program Manager for Denver Parks and Recreation. My address is 2550 Elm Street, Denver, Colorado 80207. I'd like to thank the Landmark Commission for being here today and for your time in reviewing this complicated proposal. I want to begin by acknowledging that the improvements before you today emerged from more than 2 decades of thoughtful public input and planning, from the 2005 master plan, the 2009 guidelines, to the 2012 National Historic Landmark nomination, the Secretary of Interior Standards, as well as the Civic Center Next 100 concept planning process, all of which our team's extensive experience feels that we are fully meeting. As stewards of this space, it's Denver Parks and Recreation's responsibility and privilege to uphold this guidance alongside the hopes and dreams of Denver residents. Our 2021 public engagement revealed strong community desires for more activation, programming, accessibility, and using the theater for its historic intent, while honoring the park's historic character and architecture. I have been deeply moved by the outpouring and diversity of public comments and letters showing how much Civic Center means to our community, including a wide array of perspectives. We heard from the district's councilman emphasizing the importance of accessibility, families eager to come downtown for more programming, arts, and community organizations excited about reactivating the historic intent of the space, preservation groups supporting changes that meet the 2009 design guidelines, as well as a letter of enthusiastic support from Denver's mayor that you have a copy of on your table. This constructive discourse shows how deeply our community cares about getting the future of Civic Center right. Special thanks to Landmark staff, especially Brittany, for their thorough report recommending approval. Their diligence in reviewing and refining the proposal has strengthened the project significantly. We look forward to presenting the details and answering your questions.
Is this thing working? Is it not?
You want me to click? Oh, there you go.
I did not twice. Okay. Maybe there's a little bit of like, well, hello, thank you, Jenna, and thank you all the commissioners for a lot of time today. And I also want to acknowledge and thank everybody that we heard from today. I think it is such an interesting conversation, and I think the diversity and different perspectives that we're hearing about how to manage change is a dialogue that is sort of deeply important, and just want to I hope that we can continue it today. So hello from Studio Gang. Oh, see, hold on. Sorry. Wanted to say hello from Studio Gang. My name is Angela Peckham. I'm a director. I've been working on this project from the beginning, working with of course Jenna and everybody at Parks, working with Jeannie Gang. For those of you who don't know us, we're led by Jeannie Gang. This is our home office in Chicago, formerly the Polish National Alliance. We actually had that building before we started rehabilitation on it. We had that landmarked in, I think it was 2014. We're about 85 architects in Chicago, and some sort of also in some other locations. But I've been working with Jeannie for over 17 years now, and her interests in historic preservation, they are deep. We are trying to do the right thing here, and that comes all the way from the top of our firm for sure. So getting started, what I want to share, and I want to give, I think, a fairly broad step back for you all. I think Brittany did an amazing job of sort of getting into the details of the proposal, but I do want to talk through a little bit of our design thinking and the background and sort of broaden that perspective just a bit. So today the Greek Theater is underutilized, and that's both the park as well as the theater. So what you're seeing here on the right, there's only 10 to 15 maximum events that happen in the Greek Theater, right? Out of 52 weeks, 365 days, and there are big reasons why the Greek Theater cannot support more events. And what you're seeing there is, especially for small, thank you, especially for small and medium-sized events, you have to have that sort of modern theatrical structure. Otherwise, you're raising the bar too high for people to come and bring in their own stuff. And as well, I think the bowl is oversized to make those performances energetic. So we're trying to balance a lot of goals here. So on the one hand, we've been asked to modernize that performance experience. We've been asked, as you've heard, to make the Greek Theater accessible. That's incredibly important. We've also been asked to create an attraction, a bold attraction that will enable Civic Center Park to become a premier destination, as everybody wants it to be. And then of course, we're balancing that with how to preserve the most historic material and how, I think, most importantly, to preserve the iconic stature of the Greek Theater itself. So why, big picture, why would we propose to flip the orientation? So it's actually really simple. There's a lot of reasons why it's good, and you've heard some of that from Brittany, but our primary goal was to preserve that Greek theater structure, the architecture of it intact in its original condition. That was the very first reason. And we know that that is hard. You guys have seen mashups before, right? These technical things coming on to a historical structure. I think somebody mentioned Soldier Field in Chicago, go Bears, but I don't think anybody here, nor do we, feel that that's a successful combination. It just is very, very difficult to attach something modern to something so sort of uniquely historic. We tried. You saw that, and this is two options that you're seeing, but there were actually many failed iterations. And every time Jeannie would say, "You're killing it. You're killing the theater. You can't. It's not working. It's not beautiful." And I mean, look at it. So we thought that we would try something different. We thought we would think of this in a different way.
And, we just felt strongly that we had to get the canopy off of the theater. We had to just get it away. We needed these sort of structures to be adjacent and at best sort of complementary. But knowing that the bowl had been built in 2004, we know that's modifiable. We thought, let's modify the bowl and move the canopy, just get it off of the theater. And, sort of our, the form of that, we thought a simple, classical, complementary arch would symmetrically sort of frame the theater, but it doesn't obscure it. You can see through it, it's open. And I think most importantly, isn't glommed on to the theater itself. So in this way, the sort of theater stands alone and the canopy stands on its own. The canopy, we do feel, is subordinate to the colonnade. We've talked a lot about that, I know, but we feel that it is subordinate in its mass, right? It's lightweight, it's semi-transparent, it doesn't compete with the heavy stone of the theater. We feel it's proportionately subordinate. It's smaller in breadth, it's smaller in height. The foundations meet the ground delicately, whereas the Greek theater, of course, rests on these sort of stately foundations. So just in mass and form, we do feel that we're meeting the guidelines in those respects. In addition, we, before presenting this to Parks, because we knew it was a little bit of a interesting proposal, we did want to test it, and you've heard it here, but there are a lot of sort of audience pros to the flipping of the bowl. So existing challenges, the seats are far away. They're not actually facing the stage, they're facing the center of the bowl. You're missing those center seats. The sun is in your eyes for the entire day. All of those things are solved in this new proposal. And then as well, I think, and Parks was very interested in this, but it allows for that flexible use. You can play to the park side or you can play to the theatrical side. And then of course, maybe even more importantly, and this has also been talked about a lot, we needed to solve for that accessibility. So this proposal, the regrading of the bowl, and in fact, all of the changes that are to the original fabric are to make this accessible. So we are we're doing full accessibility from 14th through the theater, around the sort of side courts and down to the promenade. As well, we're making the entire bowl accessible. Every tier of seating is accessible. So this is sort of from an accessibility standpoint, firing on all cylinders, and we think that's incredibly important. Switching gears just a little bit, we want to talk about this sort of this north-south axis. So the Greek theater is the most important structure in the park. It's an urban icon on a historical axis, but currently that axis that connects the north downtown district to the south cultural complex, as well as to the Golden Triangle area, it is disconnected right now. So, and the Greek theater is a moment that is on it. And right now, people don't take that pink line. They kind of slip in through the sides. And so we thought that, by moving the stage and making that fully accessible, that path, you're really connecting the south side with the north side. And we sort of started calling it the gateway. Greek gateway, we like alliteration. But we like the idea that you can now come through this, and it is a little bit of a recontextualization. If you look online, you cannot find photos of the sort of iconic south facade of the theater. So, and you look at it now, by taking away those stairs, you can see the promenade, you can see into the park. You're enticing people to enter through this south side. And it really becomes the front door, the primary entry to the park. And so I think it elevates the theater in that respect. So I'm going to turn it over to Tina with 3.5 minutes left to go to talk a little bit more about the guidelines particularly.
Thanks, Angela. And I had only asked for 2 minutes and 15 seconds, so like, my name is Tina Bishop. I live at 3037 West 24th Avenue. I'm a Denver resident.
principal at Mundus Bishop. You also will be familiar with me. I'm the author of the 2009 Design Guidelines. I'm also the author of the 2005 Park Master Plan, and you can see how dog-eared they are. My commitment to historic preservation goes a long way. I served on the Landmark Commission for 9 years. I served as chair for 6. I currently serve on the Colorado State and National Review Board, and so I'm very much embedded within historic preservation. In addition to my work on the design guidelines, also lead designer with Nan Anderson, who you heard from earlier today on the rehabilitation of Civic Center for the Greek Theater, the Voorhees Memorial, Broadway Terrace, and also the balustrade wall. My expertise in historic preservation was at one of the reasons I was added to the team. My role on the team is as local landscape architect and also as historical landscape architect. I bring to this project years of experience working in NHLs. I've actually worked in both of the NHLs, doing quite a bit of work at Red Rocks Amphitheater and within the park. And I'm currently working on the state capitol with the ground site plan. And then, oh yeah, I was supposed to do that. And my experience is shown up here on the screen. In addition to that NHL, I have a lot of experience across the country working at Alcatraz, Golden Gate, Bridge, Plaza, as well as current work at Fort Mason and Golden Gate and Lincoln Home. The guidelines that we're referencing were on the screen on the side there. At the root of this proposal today is the coherence of creating new elements and a thoughtful design that ensures Civic Center is inspired and a well-visited place and public space for everyday use. It's a delicate balance of preserving and repairing contributing features and also doing new elements within areas allowed by the guidelines that are respectful of proportion, scale, and the iconic nature of the park. And in closing, we ask you today to look upon and reflect upon the goals and intent of the future of Civic Center as an enduring and exciting place for all, just as our team has. And an understanding that we are meeting the design guidelines as put forth by Brittany in such a spectacular manner. And just to remember that the guidance and the master plan and that vision that we're trying to achieve was really looking to implement something that would be bold and for the next 100 years, and that would be within those guidelines to use as its outline and its framework. And really we're set upon today to think about Civic Center to realize its full potential to enrich civic life and vibrancy of downtown Denver. Thank you. And we look forward to any conversations. There were a few misconceptions that we heard during public comment, and we're happy to address any of those about the bowl in particular and scale and proportion.
Right at 15 minutes. Well done. All right. Commissioners, do you have any questions for our applicants?
So I guess I'll just kind of summarize, my understanding is as far as the historic or original character of the bowl itself, is that what we see today isn't necessarily historic or original material, and has been altered to a degree from the original design, but generally follows the historic design. Is that fair to say?
So as we were doing design, if I answer this part, as we were doing design, we went back and were able to look up additional materials. And in particular, we found some 1957 drawings of the bowl. And there's very little record to find pre-2004 for the work that was done. So just as a background, and it's in the master plan, in 2004, the bowl was built. It removed, as Brittany described, it demolished the historic material, moved the lights. The change when you compare the two, like the last document we could compare was 1957. The original bowl was more circular in nature. It had a similar number of rows, but the rake of the seating extended further in. It went beyond the planter walls. And so the bowl itself was smaller. So what was built in 2004 was an iteration of something that they understood at that time. Unfortunately, it took out the circular nature. It opened up the central promenade, so that really that distinguishing component of a change in grade, a change in elevation, a change in opening, that was broadened and opened, and the bowl was expanded to quite a bit, so it really took out that. So the rake of the seating today is much steeper. The lights, as you guys would all know, according to the master plan, they were, all the lights were rebuilt and added into the 1990s, but they were all replicas. So they were also put in place. So those are some of the changes for the bowl. And I think Brittany did a good job of describing how much change had happened to the structure of the Greek theater as well. And I think Nan has left, but during the 2010, when we did the rehabilitation projects, there were further slight modifications to that, what was considered the stage.
Yeah, okay. Commissioner Center, Larry.
Yeah, I guess, can you speak to the most important, what you perceive as the misconceptions from the public comment period?
The scale, I think, and the idea that the bowl is something that cannot be changed based on the guidelines. So the guidelines, when we put them together, and there were many folks involved in preparing them, the reason for the area of modifications was really to define future actions that would be guided, because we knew that there were going to probably be modifications. That's why it's called that area of influence for modifications. We knew at that time that the bowl had, because it was fresh, right? It had only been 5 years. We knew the bowl was a newly built, that it wasn't original material. So those are some of the rationales for having those modifications there. So I think there's a misconception that what you see in the bowl in particular today is the original historic bowl. And unfortunately, it's not. It has been modified, and as I described, a nuanced, but quite a bit. I think a few other misconceptions. I think there are folks in the public that think the new canopy structure is at the intersection of the cultural and civic axes, which, of course it is not. There's no disruption of that visual component between the state capitol and the city and county building.
I'll just add also, I think through some of the public comment, there may be a misconception that the guidelines and documents don't talk at all about the importance of activation, the importance of the historic Greek theater and for it to be utilized, the importance of accessibility as we look towards future changes in the park. The guidelines are amazing. They're quite well written, but they touch on a lot of things that would allow for a reintegration of Civic Center Park back into our city. So I just want that to be noted as well.
Okay. Go ahead, please.
I was gonna have a question. I've heard activation a lot today. As it seems like a keyword, and I want to see y'all's take on what you think this design proposal does to activate it. I mean, I understand the entrance is gonna be reoriented and the stage is gonna be reoriented. But what do you guys think or believe is gonna kind of activate this based on your design?
You can start how
Sure. I think we talked about the axis a lot, right? That north-south axis. So, drawing people from the museum campus, the cultural complex, through the Greek theater, and I think part of it is dropping the stairs, right, so that you can actually visually connect yourself into the park, as well as the South Plaza. There's a lot of, we didn't really touch on it, but there's a lot of seating, benches, sort of that human scale kind of touch and feel. I think that is going to draw people up through into the park. And then when you get there, I think those paths and part of the nature of, I think, the sort of path geometry is really supposed to be a fun path to walk, right? Not a sort of march of, of relentless straightness. It's a path that it'll be planted on both sides. There'll be a slight grade change. There'll be new, lighting, and benches, seating, and then that is going to draw you to all of the sort of amenities or new programs in the park. We talked about the decorative garden. We talked about the north garden rooms, all of that. So I think it's really about creating what feels like a welcoming pedestrian route that isn't covered by cars, that is, something that feels like a day in the park. And I think that daily pedestrian use, especially for people even working there, let alone tourists and things who want to go from the downtown to the museums and back and forth. But on a daily basis, we heard that people actually, you know, kind of don't take that central promenade, you know, they kind of go around it or they, you know, so I think it's a scale issue. And the addition of those paths, which were, you know, sort of inspired by the Bennett plan, right? That having those two flanking pedestrian width paths on either side, you know, was part of the original plan, and they had sort of since been removed. But the intent was never to have, from Bennett's perspective, was never to have just one really, really wide 60-foot central promenade. It was always to have those flanking paths. So we thought that was, I think that you will, once you get in there and you experience the landscaping and the benches and the seating and stuff that's set up for you to walk the park, I think that it's that form of activation in addition to, of course, the programming that's involved. And that's, you know, sort of an operations and parks endeavor that they're taking very seriously. So there will be a lot of new programming associated with these, the landscape that we're doing. So I do think it's a mix of sort of design elements that we can control, you know, as architects and landscape architects, as well as programming that's controlled by the city.
And if I could just add a little bit to that, I think one thing that we've loosely touched on through public comment and the things that you've heard from people that may be interested in programming the space in the future, but I want to make sure it's like reconnected back to the design. I think one of the challenges with the Greek Theater as a performance venue today is that there are actually like stairs going through the stage space itself. So when we hear from Cleo Parker Robinson Dance or the symphony or someone who needs a larger stage space, that's one of the reasons for the reconstruction of a new stage, as well as the cost prohibitive nature of community groups currently activating Civic Center Park. So that's another misconception that I think would be helpful to address. The goal of this project is not to commodify the park. The goal of the project is to make sure that we are providing infrastructure that allows for the wide array of community performances and events that our community wants to see, that today is cost prohibitive. You see AEG concerts getting set up, you see large scale events because those are the higher budget events. What we're hoping is to bring back the grassroots programming, the choirs, the high school graduations, the, you know, one person band or, you know, a political speech, the whole realm of things that our community wants to see in Civic Center that currently we cannot host and they cannot host because it's too expensive.
I'm gonna pile on one little thing. One of the biggest benefits, I think, is having a theater and a bowl that is scalable for everyday use. One of the major tenets of the 2005 master plan was to activate Civic Center for every day. That's even the rationale for building the Civic Center Conservancy. So having that partner and those components together, but finally realizing that in a space that will accommodate that program is that's a pretty spectacular vision.
Commissioners, any other questions? All right, you're off the hook. Thank you very much. Brittany, did you have any staff comments?
I would like to remind the commission that while National Historic Landmark status is very amazing, our purview is the local Denver landmark designation, and National Historic Landmark and National Register listing do not prevent changes within parks. That is only at the local level that we are able to review these alterations, and we are following the design guidelines for Civic Center. And I particularly just want to kind of focus the commission on guideline 10 within the Civic Center documents, and there's standards there too, but there are also guidelines which are D, and they do talk about allowing alterations to these spaces, particularly for its continued use as a theater space, but also allowing for protection from the sun. It does talk about subordination for mass and scale, but it also talks about retaining the iconic presence and not attaching to the Greek theater, retaining original views along the cultural axis. So the north-south is the cultural axis, if there's any confusion about some of the terms within the guidelines. and then matching the design of the Greek Theater and Civic Center, and also creating changes that are reversible. I'd also like to remind the commission that this is just the phase 1 review, so just the mass form and context. Angela did mention some of those items that we might review in phase 2, like what the hardscaping materials are, new light fixtures, benches, etc. Those are all very crucial to this, but we are only looking at the mass form and context, and we will, if approved, this will come back to the commission for a second review on materials and details.
Okay, great. Commissioners, some questions for Brittany before we begin deliberation? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I actually would really like to thank everybody that made a public comment. That really makes the conversation a lot richer and a lot more representative. I appreciate your time. All right, commissioners, let us go into deliberation. What are your thoughts? This isn't the first time we've talked about this. Who would like to begin? Somebody has to do it. George, might as well be you.
Why not? Okay, first of all, what strikes me before and at this deeper discussion, especially with the public, is that we're talking two different things here. One is typically we deal with historic districts and a person modifying or requesting to make modification to their own home or something. This is a public venue. I think it's almost an apples and oranges comparison, because there are many people who make use of the Civic Center who aren't in historic districts or who couldn't care less about historic districts. So I think that takes a little bit of a different mindset to look at. The things that strike me is that this is, a very public project. But as we have heard from a number of commenters, not all of the public is necessarily included. And I think it is absolutely necessary that as we progress and Denver progresses, that much more of the public be invited in. And that includes two things. One is accessibility, and the other one is the ability to divide the space into smaller spaces. I am very attracted to the fact that community arts institutions can make better use of the Civic Center and not, break the budget or even not consider offering what they have to offer to a public audience because they can't afford to offer it. So I'm pleased to see that from the applicants. There is, I think the intent of the applicants certainly meets the guidelines because they aren't intending to preserve the Civic Center in amber. It can't be. When we talk about the traditional view of what a Greek theater should look like and what a Greek theater and a theater space should look like, having visited a number of Greek theaters in Greece, I was very glad to hear Ms. Forbes's comment that said, yes, they're beautiful, but non-functional. I haven't seen one used in Greece, and I'm sure there might be one, but mostly it's just depreciated rocks. So I think the notion that the Civic Center will be remaining more useful to a wider audience is essential for a public project. Now, I know Mayor Spear was not everybody's favorite person, but he certainly had a very good idea of what he wanted, though he didn't live to see it completed. One of the requirements that we have, or maybe self-imposed, is would the original developer of any property recognize his project if he were to come back to Earth today and see it? I think there's no doubt that Mr. Spear would be say, yeah, that's my civic center. Don't know what they did with it, but that's it. That's my project. And look at all these people, voters here using it. I think to maintain it exactly as some of the those who object insist would be to limit its use and to limit the amount of people and its uses. So I have to say that being, as always, mightily impressed by staff's analysis of the project, I absolutely support it, and I would like to see the other commissioners do the same.
Thank you, George. Who else would like to opine?
I'll jump in and, I was a dissenting vote last time and I still respectfully disagree. I think that, and I don't want to minimize the conversation today to call it academic, but without disagreeing with the need for accessibility, activation, having been in preservation for years and understanding as a contractor, you get no work if people aren't activating historic buildings. I completely understand that. But I can't get past a fundamental challenge, I guess, in analyzing all of this is the idea that you take something and you look at the design guidelines, which say preserve the structure, including the form and original materials. We don't talk about turning red rocks around because Easter service, the sun's in your eyes. I mean, and I know that's just one day a year. That's a very specific example, but I think that part of the push and pull of preservation always has been honoring what the history is that we're trying to preserve while activating it. And I think that turning the bowl turns your back on that history is how it feels to me. And I understand all of the good reasons for doing that. I think it's important to distinguish that accessibility can be achieved without turning the bowl around. I know we've coupled those together and the design does that and does it successfully given the final product. But I think that Civic Center and the Greek Theater specifically can still be made an accessible place and an active place without physically turning it around. And I'm eager to hear what other commissioners think, and the public comment has been exceptionally helpful and hearing both sides. But I do think that fundamentally taking something that's so strongly oriented and is such a critical piece of the original part of the park that has lasted so long is still difficult for me to do.
All right, thank you, Graham.
I'll jump in. I agree that the public comments have been very helpful in kind of thinking through and lots of different opinions that I respect and they're at opposition to each other. So this isn't necessarily a slam dunk. But I think when I try to distill for myself the importance of Civic Center's design, which is other than, its kind of civic role that it's had in the city, I think its design, its Beaux-Arts classical design is what is really driving its significance. When I try to distill that for myself, I think of its scale, its symmetry, the axes that are there, and the sight lines along those axes and among the elements. And then when I think of this proposed design, I think that those fundamental characteristics are preserved. And so, and even thinking of like the theater itself, there was a comment of kind of the front and back and flipping it. I actually think that it has always been an amorphous front and back. I frequently enter the park through the theater. I would be coming out onto the stage if it was in use. And even historic photos, I see audience members, in the colonnade itself, looking at both the people in the audience and what's happening to what was historically the stage. And so I kind of think that it's not as simple as front and back for the theater, and that actually the theater kind of still maintains its historic characteristics, even if the orientation is 180 degrees, because it's still keeping symmetry, the axes, etc. And then, of course, the reversibility, as far as we understand it today, there's still more to kind of look at in future phases, is another aspect of this proposal that I think is important, and is one reason why I would support it. So those are my thoughts, and I am supporting the proposal.
All right, thank you. Who else?
Yeah, I would, agree with basically all of Erica's points. And yeah, I think that the public comments have been really great today. It's just made me very happy to be part of this city. It's been, not only a lot of passionate and smart comments, but right on time every single and I definitely understand the hesitation on the part of those who are hesitant about it. I think it's certainly not, something to undertake lightly, and there are definitely, given that this is conceptual at this point, there are risks of how does the final product turn out compared to the renderings. But it's very clear to me that everybody who's been involved in this design process has thought through how to address real functional concerns and to also as delicately and lightly touch the historic fabric as possible. And as Erica said, the reversibility, I think, is a very key point that allows me to be able to support this.
All righty. Thank you, Larry. Did you have anything?
Yeah, I would just add my support for staff and their view of this project, and I've supported it all 3 times I've seen it. I would just and I took a look at the guidelines again before this meeting in an effort to really make sure I dotted the i's and crossed the t's, given all the passion on both sides from the community, which I really appreciate. And we all really appreciate it as part of the discourse, and always leads to a better project. But if you look at page 62 and 63 of the Denver Civic Center Design Guidelines, my read of that in looking at this application is that it dictated this answer. And that's simply my view as a commissioner. One other thing I would add is, I appreciate all of the research that was done and all the materials that were handed out to us as part of this meeting. But I looked specifically at the handout that was handed to me. It says, "Why Greek theater?" And it leads me to conclude that calling our Greek theater a Greek theater is a little bit of a misnomer. While the seating is correct and the classical design of the structure is perhaps correct or abstracted, traditionally it would be a linear form as a backdrop and form on a real stage. And so that misnomer aside, what this Greek theater that we have sets us up for is this solution, in my view. The arms of that theater embracing the new seating area facing the pavilion is an elegant solution, and I would argue is not pressing the easy button, as somebody argued it was. It was very difficult, I think, to get to that point, as a lot of the best designs in our lifetimes, previous lifetimes are. They look simple. It's the simple answer, but it's hard to get there. And so I really appreciate the applicant, the architect. Appreciate you making the trip here. We have it nice and cold in the room, so you can feel like you're in. And,
Should have been there yesterday.
yeah, and I'm in strong support of the project.
Thank you, Nick. Chris, did you have anything?
No, I'm just gonna go back to the activation question, right? I think that's a big question mark for everybody, including the design team and the city. Is like, you can't, necessarily predict that, right? One, whatever design you come up with or you propose, it's really, really, really difficult to say this particular design is gonna activate the space more than it is now. And so, I think that's where, I don't want to use the word, scared, where I come from as commissioner is voting to approve something that doesn't really necessarily do anything in the long term. And I think we all, whether we want to be, traditional preservationist or have some progress in some of these spaces, is we want them to be used and well used and liked by the city and the community. And so I think that's all we really care about when it comes down to things. And that's all I know I care about. So I just have my fingers crossed and hope that it does the job.
Rusty, Emily, either of you would like to say something?
Sure, I'll just say real quickly that as the other dissenting vote previously, this second presentation has been really helpful for me. I'm much more comfortable with some of the unknowns and or at least not understood to me sufficiently last time around. And I think it's a very elegant and successful proposal.
Thank you, Emily.
In thinking about this, I did quite a bit of research into the traditional Greek theater, and the UNESCO site specifically on their Greek theater talks about the transition of type between Greek and Roman, and how there was a constant attempt for the architecture to reflect better technical uses, acoustics, and really change the typology based on the needs of the performers. And I guess what I would say, I would emphasize a lot of the other things that other people have said, but I think it's important that this stays a theater and not a monument within all of the other constraints that have been used. And I think that this proposal allows a lot more of that use. And there's a lot more considerations, but I would just add that to the discussion. And I second a lot of the other support that the commissioners have provided.
Emily, thank you very much. George?
Just one more quick thing that Erica actually, the reversibility, which is very important. Like I said, the Greek theaters that I've seen were built in hillsides. You can't turn those around. But, should something need to be reversed or modified for a particular production or divided for several productions, this plan would allow that and still let it be called a Greek theater. So thanks for the reversibility.
May I say one more thing about that?
Of course, Emily.
I meant to highlight the reversibility as a huge component of this that I really value. And I would like to, in the phase 2 submittal, see, absolutely any attempt that can minimize the deconstruction of the planters or any of the ways that it's currently shown to be non-reversible. So I'd like to see any attempt that can be, sorry, I'm not describing it well, but in that vein.
Okay, great. All right, commissioners, at long last, do I hear a motion from the floor?
Guess I'll take it on here.
Chris?
Sorry, let me get to my thing here.
Hear it too, if that helps.
Oh, there you go.
I don't think I brought my glasses, so I probably can't. Madam Chair, I move to approve application 2024-COA-832 for the phase 1 mass form and context submittal at 101 West 14th Avenue Parkway, the Greek Theater, as per Civic Center Design Guidelines 3B, C, E, X, Guideline 2.55, 2.69, character defining features for the Civic Center Historic District, presented testimony, submitted documentation and information provided, and staff report.
Chris, thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
George had seconded it. All in favor of the motion, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Dissent.
The lone dissent is Commissioner Graham Johnson. All right, it has been approved. And again, I want to thank everybody who came out today. We got what you wanted or not. We really do appreciate it. Thank you so much. All right. All right, let's go on. Hopefully we can get out of here before dinner time. Okay, our next project is 2025-COA-034. Everybody, sorry, if you could have your conversations out in the hall. We've got a lot of business ahead of us this afternoon. Thank you. Okay, let me try that again. 2025-COA-034 at 1060 St. Francis Way at St. Elizabeth's Church. On this AV project. Now, please, conversations outside.
All right, well, I'll see you at the beach.
All right, sounds good.
You're supposed to go outside?
I'm tired. Go ahead, Amy.
Okay. Okay. 1060 St. Francis Way is the next review that you're looking at today. So this image shows the property is a church owned by the Archdiocese of Denver, and it is on the Auraria campus. And the project you're going to discuss is meant to enhance security for the property. So they propose to install exterior cameras around the perimeter of the site, place 8 exterior doors and hardware, and modify site walls. I've been informed by the applicant that this project is being funded through grants. And so they may end up having to prioritize what they can actually pursue or not, but they'd like to have the entire scope of work, their ideal scope of work reviewed. This is one of the earlier landmark designations in the city, just for your information, listed in 1969. At the time of designation, the discussion of creating the Auraria Education Campus was a big deal. There was a proposal really to remove the development in the area, and a grassroots effort to landmark several structures, including this one. 4 structures, I believe, were preserved. I had a heck of a time working with the Sanborn map to identify this for you because nothing looks like this anymore. So here's the site, just for your reference. There's the church proper and then a monastery wing to the side. Next slide, please. Here's a site plan showing the property, and you can see it's abutted by streets. It's on a corner is what I mean to say. And this diagram is showing you the locations generally of the door replacements that are proposed to occur. So mostly to the rear, some of them are in that kind of arcade, that arched shape at the front of the site, not highly visible locations. Next slide, please. And I should say all of the doors are to be replaced within the existing frame. So it's just the door unit itself, but other elements of the opening are preserved. This diagram shows you the approximate location of security cameras. There are quite a few of these, again, around the perimeter of the building. And I'm also showing here, just for your reference, locations where acrylic is to be installed over top of some windows to protect the openings. That actually isn't something that you need to review because it isn't a permit type of requirement. They will be ventilated, and there are details provided in the application just so that you know they're properly installed. Next slide, please. So talking about, I should say the security cameras were kind of the main topic. We held a pre-application conference with the applicant team, and that was really the main topic of concern for staff as we coached them towards bringing this application to you. It's a lovely building with rusticated stone and not a lot of surfaces that are easy to mount cameras to without having some, potential for long-term damage. So you will see in the application that there are a lot of notes about how camera locations will ultimately be very carefully selected. They're going to co-locate things. They're going to use existing mounting points. They're going to hang things off of downspouts. They're going to put up cameras and then see where they can avoid duplication by just angling a different way. So while there are quite a few cameras proposed, we feel the applicant has done a good job of addressing staff's concerns in the design guidelines. Onto the doors, as I said, there's 8 doors to be replaced. 2 of them are original. And you see them, at least 2 of them with arrows on this slide. None of them have the same design, the 3 historic doors. One of them has 3 panels and just 1 area of glazing at the top. The other 2 are sort of half lights. One has divided lights, one doesn't. The applicant plans to replace with an aluminum clad door. They're going to replicate the 2 designs that I have shown here with arrows. They were planning to use divided lights in the other half light doors that you see in some of these images, but we're discouraging that because we don't know that that was the original design. We're asking that on these 2 shown on the slide, they will exactly replicate the original door, but in all other openings, they'll do the half lights and the original lights. And that is listed as a condition of approval in the memo. Next slide, please. The last aspect of the project under discussion today is amendments to the site walls. So there are non-historic walls kind of indicated with these orange X's on the slide that are already over the height limits more than likely in their current configuration. They're solid walls, at least 6 feet tall. And the applicant would like to add a metal railing on top of that to extend the height between 10 to 12 feet, depending on the locations. Staff does find that they're in, at least the wall in the back is in an obscured location. The design of the railing to be added is complementary to other features on the building. This will require a zoning administrator approval to allow walls of this height. They have various criteria they can use in making that decision, including improved security. So staff supports it in terms of finding the design guidelines are met, but it will take this next level of approval. Next slide, please. So with that, we do recommend your approval of the application, finding all the applicable design guidelines are met. And we've added the suggested condition of approval to clarify the design for the doors. Referencing door type G, which is illustrated in the packet, will be used for all units except for doors 002 and 233, which will be exactly replicated.
Thank
Our
you, Amy.
recommendation.
Okay, any questions for Amy? Okay, great. The applicant? Yes. Were you here that whole time? Oh, my.
I felt like I needed to do this for a professional learning experience here, you know.
Well, you learned a lot today.
I get to come in front of you all, so.
Well, I'm glad you're here now.
So you're on the camera.
We're probably gonna go home and join us by Zoom, so thank you for sticking it out. Anyway, yeah. So please give us your name and then you've got 10 minutes.
Matt Walczyk with Edos Architects. Kind of as Amy had kind of introduced for us here, so.
If you want me to change, just let me know.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, you go to the next slide. Again, this project is simply to improve the security for the church. They've had a number of incidents over the years of individuals climbing over the existing site walls, trying to get into the actual monastery and church cathedral building itself. So our attempt here is to kind of do a minimally impact the aesthetic of the existing church itself while kind of increasing that security. Next slide. So again, this is two different FEMA grants that this project is under with funding to improve the security. One of those grants is the security cameras. So adding new cameras to the existing kind of door locations around those existing opening locations and making sure that, you know, the multiple levels of entry into the building are visible, and also giving AHEC itself some additional kind of resources of seeing what's happening around their campus. Go to the next slide. Again, this is looking at the doors right here. We are not proposing to hit every single door at this time. There are several doors that over the years have inaccessible spaces and are not a concern to the church from an access standpoint. But this back door, for instance, is their actual food pantry that they serve out of. And so they do want that added level of security at that back alley way there. So we can go to the next slide. This main level is our highest area of impact with 5 of the doors and a couple of windows that we'd like to kind of add some additional protection to. Additionally, there would be cameras throughout. As kind of noted, most of the doors are either in the alleyway kind of visibility or kind of concealed within that colonnade or behind the existing site walls themselves. So we can go to the next slide. Additionally, there along that alleyway on the kind of west side, we do have the additional site walls being shown in gates, new gates on top of the existing site walls there. That would also occur on the east side there, kind of what would be somewhat visible from Spear Avenue. The intent here is that these new railings on top of the existing site walls would align with an existing site wall on an adjacent property in height. So not increasing anything above and beyond what is already kind of existing in context on site. Next slide, please. Again, there's one door on that second level that they've actually had somebody climb up from the ground floor and onto their balcony there, that they would like to actually provide some additional hardening to, as well as some security monitor. Slide, please. And go to the next. Just some existing photos for the context of the committee. Again, we're trying to do is what we can to minimize any aesthetic impact to what is existing there, and simply just upgrade the actual hardening and some of that video surveillance. This, as Amy had pointed out, that window that we were trying to add some protection to with the ventilated screen, and not trying to be as minimally disruptive as possible. Again, the lower left 2 photos of those existing doors of the historical that we'll be doing our best to match there with the aluminum clad wood doors. And you see no exception with that comment of the, not providing the divided lights at the one door, just without any real historical data of what was truly there to begin with. Next. And then some additional details on those gates and matching of that existing site wall can be shown on drawing 2 there. And this is our intended use for basis of design for that aluminum clad wood doors, intending to match color wise to the existing wood staining on the exterior side. Next. As was noted, finding ways to attach these cameras that is either easily repairable and removable if it does come down in the future, but also finding existing locations where we have utilities to repurpose an existing junction box and opening in a wall and or mount to downspouts throughout as a way. Next, please. And different mounting options here that we have for the hardware. For the security cameras, also adding new on access control at the doors for security purposes there. Again, downspout mounting and also some ceiling back box mounting. Trying to keep it as simple as possible without touching any of the existing stonework. So, questions?
Oh, okay. Commissioners, questions for the applicant? Doesn't sound like it. Okay. Amy, did you have any other thoughts?
I totally forgot to mention that each door that's being replaced will have a security, like a screen type door, security door put on it. And that is something you do not typically review because it doesn't need a permit. So I didn't include any discussion of it.
Okay. All right. Commissioners, any questions for Amy? No. Okay. All right. All right, commissioners, let us go into deliberation. What are your thoughts, guys? And Emily? Nick supports staff, okay?
Seems really.
Emily? Is Rusty still with us?
He had to leave the meeting as well, so no,
Okay.
he's not.
All right,
supports
then do I hear, okay, cool. Do I hear a motion from the floor? Nick?
Madam Chair, I move to approve with conditions application 2025-COA-034 for the installation of exterior security cameras, replacement of exterior doors and hardware, protection of windows and modification to site homes at 1060 St. Francis Way as per design guidelines 2.15, 2.21, 2.23, 2.65, 5.2, 5.5, and 5.6. Presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report. As a condition of approval, door 149 and all other door replacements except doors 002 and 233 shall be a modification of proposed door type G without divided lights in the glazing panel to avoid adding non-historic design features.
Thank you, Nick. Is there a second?
Second.
Larry has seconded. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? All right, it has been approved. All righty. You can work with Amy further on the project. All right, terrific. Let's go on then to 2024-COA-987 at 528 North Corona Street in the Alamo Placida District. And Brittany is our staff person. Take it away, Brittany.
So our next project is for alterations to a porch stoop that came to us as a violation. So this project is at 528 North Corona Street in the Alamo Placita Historic District, which has a period of significance from 1889 to 1942, and this home was built in 1906. It is on Corona, which is a one-way going south, and it is 2 properties in from the Safeway, if you're familiar with that area. So here is the property in question. The image on the bottom of the screen is the prior conditions, and the image on the top of the screen is the existing conditions. So this stoop is clearly a non-historic stoop constructed out of concrete, and we're really, I mean, the footprint is and the foundation looks original, but the stairs are concrete, and the Sanborn maps indicate that it was probably originally a porch and not a stoop. So it has definitely been modified over time, but this again was brought to our attention as when our inspector went out to inspect a rear addition to this property. They noticed that the applicant was doing work on the front stairs, which included adding this tile to the face of the stairs and also onto the foundation slab. So we did issue a stop work order on this scope of work, and staff did communicate immediately with the architect on this project that we would likely not be supportive of adding this tile onto the stoop, as that we felt it was not compliant with our guidelines, which recommend replacement or repair of damaged porch elements to match those of the original condition. So guideline 2.3E specifically states restore all, 2.38D, restore altered or non-original components to their original condition, i.e. if original wood porch steps have been replaced with concrete, consider restoring them to their original wood condition. So we are recommending denial of this project. We would like to note that we did issue a stop work order, but that work was completed, even though we did issue that stop work order and told the applicant to not proceed with the work. However, we understand that this took a while to move forward, and they did have it open as a construction site for a while. But we just don't feel that it complies with our guidelines of returning to its original materials. So that is the reason we're recommending that it not be approved today. So I have that recommendation here
All right,
on the screen.
great. Commissioners, any questions for Brittany?
Yeah.
Nick.
So the proposed solution to get them back within the guidelines would be to just rip off the tile and restore the concrete?
We have told them that they could do that and just simply paint the stairs, because there was a lot of chipping on the paint that was on there. Or they could propose also to return it to its original porch state, but I don't think that's proposed at this time. So there are a few solutions, but we don't know which.
Got it.
We're not mandating a specific solution.
Got it, thank you.
Okay.
They don't have to go to a full width porch required, no, okay.
All right, is our applicant with us?
Yes, can you guys hear me?
We can hear you, thank you. So you'll have 10 minutes to tell us about this project, and please start that with your name.
My name is Karosh Kakishani. I'm new to this neighborhood of Alamo Placida. We purchased this house in 2021, and I've been quite happy with the fact that we're in this historic neighborhood. We did do some extensive renovations to the inside and added an addition for which we did get landmark approval, and are essentially done with almost all the exterior renovations as of now. One of the things when we were getting ready to paint the house was to repaint the stairs, and there was already some light damage to the concrete, probably over time and weathering and a crack in it. So we had some options with our contractor and ended up deciding on a tile, not knowing that this was something that needed to get approval from the landmark. This was kind of mid-construction, and it is out of full transparency. The project was essentially 99%. I'm sorry, more than half done. So we didn't know how long it was going to take to try to appeal this, so we decided just to complete it and go through an appeal process. If you can go to the next slide, I can see some of the before and after photos. The photo on the left is the before, is the paint kind of coming off. We didn't have any before photos of some of the cracking that was underneath the paint in different areas, and it wasn't very sightly, so we kind of went through our options and tried to keep something dark colored so it'd go along with the prior coloring of the house, at least when you'd go by. And we also discussed like what were their best, most durable options to kind of go forward for a long period of time, so that there would be very little requirement for upkeep and weatherization that we see in a lot of the houses around the neighborhood. And when we learned about that, one of the options was to go back to wood, a wood porch, and that was kind of out of what we found acceptable for durability. And we saw a lot of the homes around us had a lot of weathering on their wood, so that one we didn't pursue. But the concrete, where we had to decide whether or not we were going to rip everything out and put concrete back, we wanted to appeal to see if we could pursue keeping the tile in place, as it does resemble the appearance from before, although it's not concrete. And it obviously the opinions of whether or not it looks better or worse is perhaps moot to landmark, but we certainly thought it looked better. The next slide. we just went around the neighborhood, and even before we were deciding on what material, actually all the next slides show that and specifically in Alamo Placida, there were a number of homes and some businesses that had concrete or wood porch around the neighborhood, and we were trying to weigh out what looked great, and we didn't know that this was a violation just because tons of neighbors around us have different materials. So the next slide just kind of goes through another one. There's one with brick, there's one with stone. Here's one with another type of stone. This is also in Alamo Placida. I didn't write down the exact address, but it's within 3-block radius of my home on Corona. The next slide has another one that does have a historic placard on it. This one has clear-cut tiling of some sort as well. But the rest of the photos you can go to the next slide as well. These are just examples of other homes that we were driving around trying to figure out what looks good on homes of this type. The same way we drove around looking for paint schemes. We tried to match another very similar home just several blocks away in our paint scheming. We thought it looked fabulous. And then and same thing when it came to the stoop, to try to choose something that we thought was consistent with the neighborhood, at least a lot of the changes in the neighborhood. So it was a matter of ignorance at first, and we didn't know it was a landmark violation. But we wanted to consider our an appeal process to see if this could be accepted, so we don't have to rip this out and restore concrete that has to be revamped every 2 years due to weathering. And I also want to say thanks for your time. I was listening to the whole discussion the past 2 hours, and this seems kind of a small project compared to what you guys have been discussing, which seems a lot more grandiose compared to some steps. But I do appreciate everyone's time. And this is a photo of just some wooden stairs that we didn't think could stand up to the weather, even something like today. But we wanted something that could last some time and not need to be revamped so soon, and maintain its durability, quality, and appearance over a longer period of time than certainly the wood that was in the guidelines, as well as some of the concrete options that we had to consider. And that's a business that's on Downing, and they have some sort of stone steps in. So that was the last photo.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for sticking with us. It was a long one. Sorry about that. And this might be a smaller project than the last one, but it's big to you. So we're glad you're stuck with us. So commissioners, do you have any questions for our applicant? Nick does.
I don't see any photos that show the side condition of that front stair. Can you take a minute and describe what the materials are and how that looks, like the stringer and the space beneath the stair or to the side of the stair? What is the material and what does that look like?
The material was a filler material that we tried to match the color with a what is it called? It's like a mortar material that just filled the space, so it just looks dark on the side. And that way, it just from the side, it just looks like the same color. It doesn't really stand out any more than the stairs at all. We tried to match the color as close as possible with the mortar material and coloring with the recommendation of the expert that put it in.
So it in color, it matches the tile, or it matches the painted brick?
It matches the brick, it matches the tiling, not the brick, not the light colored brick behind it. It matches the tile. And before it was that blue colored concrete paint on the side of it. So that's the before photo. On the side of it was just colored painted concrete. So we wanted to kind of preserve the appearance of a darker stairway up to a lighter colored home to begin with.
Thank you.
Anybody else, Commissioner? No? Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, sir. And again, thanks for hanging in there with us. All right. Did you have any other comments?
Oh, I just wanted to confirm those are like solid concrete stairs. And so the Sanborn maps again show like a full width porch. And this is partial width, like, so I think the historic materials from the original porch were repurposed some for the foundation. But this is definitely not the original historic porch. This is my neighborhood, so I can also say there are many porches that are not original in this neighborhood. But I did not have time to research the ones provided by the applicant and look into specifically, so I don't have a timeline for y'all on those. All I know is that this one was altered and that's why we're looking at it today.
All right, let's go into deliberation then. Commissioners, what are your thoughts?
I was just gonna say, I feel better about supporting the applicant if I can understand how this looks from the side, a little better. In general, if it was a well thought out, three-dimensional solution that incorporated this tile, I could support the applicant, but I'm left wondering.
Okay, Larry, you were about to say something.
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess I just don't see how, if this were brought to us new now, how this would meet the guidelines. And so I agree with the staff report on the denial. And I also just have a friendly comment to the applicant that the notion that tile applied to concrete in a heavy freeze thaw climate is maybe not as durable as it might seem intuitively, because water will seep in between the grout joints, and if this is actually limestone, it's porous, and so water will seep in through the stone, and the salt that you might add to melt snow will also help exacerbate issues with that. And I mean, I've seen a million cases of tiles popping off at entryways that are heavily trafficked and use a lot of de-icing.
That's a good one.
It's also very slippery.
Yeah, it can be quite slick as well, so.
Any other comments, commissioners? Alrighty then, do we hear a motion from the floor?
Madam Chair, I will
Good.
move to deny application 2024-COA-987 for the Porch Stoop limestone tile alterations at 528 North Broome Street per design guideline 2.38, character defining features for the Alamo Pleasant Historic District, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff.
Thank you, Graham. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Larry has seconded. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? All right, the recommendation, or the application has been denied. All right. We have one more, 2024-COA-1008 at 722 North High Street, East 7th Avenue, and that's Jesse's project. Hey, Jesse.
We turned the hair down even more.
I know.
As if I haven't lost almost all of it.
We didn't need worse. We had 18. It must have been freezing in here yesterday. Go for it, Jesse.
I will try and speak up because it was really hard to hear on the other side, right under those vents. So this is 722 High Street. It was constructed in 1916 and is a contributing building to the East 7th Avenue Historic District. The existing window operation types include double hung casement style windows, at least those that are pertinent to this case. Many of the historic windows on 722 High Street feature unique divided light patterns and distinctive leaded glass and are character defining features of this building. The applicant is requesting to install egress windows on the sides of the house. Staff is recommending conditional approval of the application. We will use the next few slides to go over our findings. So next slide. Pictured here is the historic pictured here is the floor plans labeling the location of egress windows. The applicant is requesting to alter 4 historic windows and add 1 new window opening for egress. Replacement windows will be custom Douglas fir windows with divided light patterns to match the historic window patterns on the upper levels of the building. The commission may consider the addition of egress windows as a means of meeting life safety requirements. The guidelines do support the addition of egress windows on the sides and back of the house as a means of minimizing their visibility and overall impact on the historic character of the home. If you'll go to the next slide. So the applicant is requesting to alter 3 double hung divided light cottage style windows on the second floor of the house and 1 casement divided light window at the basement level on the side of the house. The applicant will also add a new window opening on the north elevation, which is on the side. The egress window will be custom Marvin Douglas fir windows with divided light pattern that matches the historic divided light pattern on the main level and second floor levels of the house. The current basement level window to be converted into an egress window is a simple 2 light divided light window. Landmark design guidelines state match a new basement egress window to the historic basement window type or use a single light casement window. Staff do not feel that the proposed divided light pattern on the basement egress window matches the historic basement window types. Additional photos and drawings and comparison sheets and replacement window information can be found in your application materials. Next slide. So we are recommending conditional approval of the application. Essentially, just the only condition that we have attached here is for the basement egress window that it either be a 2 light or single light casement style window, so that it better aligns with what the guidelines say. Staff would like to note this is on the side of the house at the basement level. It is set back from the front of the house and will have limited visibility, but staff did make this recommendation as we do need to adhere to the guidelines, but the commission may have additional flexibility.
All right, commissioners, questions for Jason? Larry.
Question just kind of about the approach to egress windows in general. I mean, it's pretty common that egress windows, not thinking about like basement conditions, but above grade, or say bedroom windows in historic homes don't meet egress requirements because those requirements didn't exist. And I don't believe our current code requires those to be upgraded generally.
There is a provision in the code that would allow you to maintain the windows if they are historic windows. They are requesting egress, and in the past, the commission has, in cases where it deals with life safety measures, has provided some flexibility for adding egress windows in bedroom areas. Again, that's a good question to ask the applicant and also discuss during deliberation as well.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear that, yeah, we're not in a situation where they're being required to replace
No.
these with egress windows. It's their choice. Okay.
Exactly, yes.
Any other questions? Okay, great. Jesse, thank you very much. Is our applicant still with us?
Hello, Nick Young, the applicant here.
Hi, terrific. Please, give us your name and then you've got 10 minutes to tell us about these windows.
Hi, Nick Young with Mod Architecture Plus Design. Yes, we are requesting to replace existing windows and add 1 new window for egress components. As you guys might not technically require, but we are required to have egress in these bedrooms by the International Residential Code. We've spent quite a bit of time going back and forth with Jess and the Landmark team, so I think we're comfortable with the proposed above grade windows and the request in regards to the basement window, in regards to the divided lights and matching the existing. We're perfectly fine with that. I think we're fine either way. For continuity, we felt as if matching the above grade windows, but we've then had a better understanding of the guidelines in regards to recommendations of adhering to the context of the existing windows in this case. So I think that's our 2 cents on that. These windows in particular, the basement window, they're almost near impossible to see from the street elevation. The sidewalk is down about 5 feet from the grade elevation where these are at. So they're quite difficult to see from the public right away.
Okay, that's it.
That's it.
Okay, cool. Commissioner, do you have any questions for our applicant? Okay, doesn't sound like there are any questions. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate your time. All right, Jesse, did you have any further, anything else to say?
Just as a reminder, as Larry had pointed out, that there is no requirement to install egress. The applicant is requesting egress so that in these bedroom areas so that they better meet code, but there is not a code requirement for historic buildings to meet egress.
Thank you. All right. Commissioners, let's go into deliberation. What are your thoughts? Those are nice windows that they're proposing. I put those in the last house that I worked on. They're beautiful.
I love it when the applicant says he has no problem with it. I can support it.
Yep, my support.
All right, Emily, you're okay? Excellent. All right. Do I hear a motion from the floor?
Sure.
George.
Madam Chair, I move to approve with conditions application 2024 COA 1008 for the egress windows at 722 High Street as per design guidelines 2.14, 2.18, character defining features for the East 7th Avenue Historic District, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report with the following condition: that the new basement egress window match the historic basement window types or be a single light casement window.
George, thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Larry has seconded it. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? All right, it has, that project has been approved, so good luck with the windows. Thank you very much. All right, that is the end of our design review projects. Do we have any business items? Do we have any discussion items? We have not. All right, then it is 4:45, 4:45. I am adjourning the meeting. Thank you very much, everybody.